Welcome to Brothers of the Serpent podcast.
And welcome back, mystery lovers, conspiratorialists, and pill seekers all across the fruited plain.
Pills!
This is Brothers of the Serpent podcast, coming to you not live from the 10 by 10 by 10 tangent cube of science, where we hail atop the Edwards Plateau amidst the dusty bones of an ancient seabed, and floods, and destruction,
And mayhem.
and no gas. That's what I've been looking for all day, man. Gas food.
Yeah, so you waited in line, you said?
Yeah, I went to one station and I was like, okay, there's a huge line here. Fuck this station. So I drove to another one and I was like, and I started to realize, wait, there's going to be a line at every station. So I got in line behind this huge line and I'm waiting. And I pull forward and I'm waiting. And then the one of the, it was just two pumps, like I guess four.
Yeah.
You know, so two tanks or whatever. The two closest to me ran out. Like while I was sitting there, I was like, shit, you know? So we keep pulling up. And then the one farthest, like the next one also ran out while I was still two people behind. I was like, God damn it. I've been in that line already for like an hour and a half or an hour, 10 minutes or something. So then I drove to another station and it was the one close to where we work. So one where you like right,
Yeah.
if you don't turn right there. And I sat in that one for another hour and the one right in front ran out, and I was like, "Oh my god, I hope this doesn't happen again."
Oh my god!
But I was able to get to the last one, and but they only had the 93 left, so I had to fill up a premium.
Jeez,
$60. But
I got lucky after work. The gas station right there, the same one. I guess they had refilled.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I pulled up, and I was, like right when I pulled up, two cars pulled out, and I was like, "Oh!" Got in there.
It's the one you didn't take a left. You went right all the way
I went to
okay.
173.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah, we got this pissed me off like all day. I was just mad because somewhere I didn't read the news story, but I heard that it was on the news that that there was going to be a shortage.
Right.
And I was like, well, you just guaranteed the shortage began right then. Because immediately everybody goes to the gas station and starts filling up all their tanks and all their gas cans and creates a local shortage right there. Because the gas stations have schedules and they have their basic, they know pretty much when their tanks are going to be getting low based on averages.
Yeah.
So they all get emptied out and then they all have to call and like order, but everybody else is calling and ordering new trucks.
Yeah.
So then they find out they can't get a new truck for days.
Yep. And supposedly, well, at first I heard that the main refinery was going to be down for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But then I saw something else that might be back up in a couple of days. I don't even know.
Yeah. And then there's other refineries that aren't down.
Yeah.
So there wouldn't have been a problem, in my opinion.
Yeah.
There may have been a slight period in a few days when the normal, like at normal consumption levels, when the tanks got low. They may have had some trouble getting a few trucks here and there.
Right.
It wouldn't have been a big deal.
Right.
But this created a run.
Yeah.
And so naturally, like the demand just skyrockets and nobody's prepared for that.
Right.
So there's a shortage, even though there's plenty of gas everywhere.
Right.
Everybody's carrying it with them in their cars and in their gas cans.
It causes hoarding.
Yeah, and I contributed to the hoarding, which pissed me off even more, right? I'm like, God, like I need this gas too, and everyone else is running on it, so I have to run on it.
Yeah, that's what I had to do too. I was pissed about it. I was like, damn it, I have almost a half a tank, but I have to go and like fucking sit in line because I know that there isn't going to be any after today or tomorrow. So this is annoying.
Yep, I was pissed.
And what about that chemical plant that's like exploding every day?
Yeah, well, I didn't read about that. What's the deal?
It's in damn it, I can't remember the name of the town or whatever. It starts with a C.
But it requires refrigeration or something?
Yeah, so they're a chemical plant and they make different kind of fertilizers and some other stuff. It's not really clear, but it involves ammonia nitrate and and some other even more volatile things. But they're basically like you have to keep them cold. You have to keep these different chemicals they have refrigerated, or else they'll begin to like degrade, and then one of the degrading process, one of the steps, everything becomes explosive and mixed together and explodes. And like they obviously lost power. Like the planet itself was under 6 feet of water still. Like I was looking at pictures of it, and you can see their security fence, just the very top part of it sticking out of the water. It's still under 6 feet. And it's one of those stupid deals where they have backup generators, and the backup generators are elevated, right? Mm-hmm. But the fucking the power transfer switches are in the basement. So like generators can't power the plant because the switches are all down underwater.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So they lost power, and then they couldn't refrigerate. What was cool about this though is that unlike other plant explosions in recent memory, and I don't know about how much farther back, I've tried to look and research how often this happens, but like they basically announced it. Like they were like straight up like, look, our plant's shut down. It's going to catch on fire. At least it's probably going to explode. They got with the authorities, and gave everybody a huge warning, and they're like everybody downwind or whatever needs to get out of there because it's going to be ammonia gas.
Oh yeah,
which kills you like instantly.
Yeah.
I saw a video because of like somebody was like, "This is what happens with ammonia gas," and I clicked on it, and there was a trucker who was driving a tank of it or whatever, and he had pulled over, and because something was going on with the tank, he went walking up to it and just fell. He was just on.
Oh my God.
And so, you're seeing this from the, like, you don't see him fall because what you're watching is a cop video. He pulls up to check on the dude, and you see him get out and walk over there and just. It sucks.
Holy shit!
You're like, you don't even know. You can't smell it. Like he goes walking over to check on the trucker who's like laying on the ground, and you just see the cop walk over there and just fall down, and he dies like that.
Damn.
Yeah. So, but they've put out a warning, and they've evacuated all these people, and I heard that it didn't really explode. There were two detonations or whatever. Something popped inside the facility, but they're not sure what it is. It's still under all this water.
Yeah.
But now they're definitely saying like, yeah, it's going to go, and the water's not going anywhere. There's just too much.
Yeah, what was the numbers they were calculating, like how much rain fell?
Oh yeah,
it's like trillions of gallons.
Oh yeah, I didn't see that. Yeah, I was looking at a list of like where it was listing counties and how many inches they got, and some of them were ridiculous, like 10 feet. How do you get 10 feet of water?
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was like almost 120 inches of rain.
Yeah,
in some counties or whatever.
So we were talking about we were making jokes last time about there being an eclipse and then an apocalypse, which is basically the way it always happens in ancient times. Like the stories of the sun went black and then everything blah. So yeah, laughing about it, but this situation is not funny. But we were talking about how down here, even in the partial eclipse, during the maximum coverage of the sun,
which was like 61% here.
Yeah, it was noticeably cooler.
Yeah.
Like when it was blocked out, it was just like, wow, man, the weather changed.
Yeah.
It was really interesting, like looking at the lighting. So we were talking about how this eclipse like covered this massive landmass from the northeast or the northwestern United States all the way down to the southeast.
The band
went into the Gulf.
Yeah, the band of totality was like 70 miles wide, but the band of like all the way out to like what we were at, down to 50% on either side was humongous because like we're down in South Texas, and like the totality above us was in like, what was it? It was above Oklahoma, right? You had to go into Colorado to get to it. So that's a huge wide band just to go out to 50%.
Yeah.
And we felt, so like the band of totality went from Washington State down to Georgia and then went out into the Atlantic. But the Gulf had a huge area of eclipse on it too, right? And like I think Harvey came up the Gulf, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So there was already a
It was like a little. So that was the weird thing, is that it was this little depression.
Yeah, tropical depression. Yeah.
And then it started like, and it's been moving incredibly slowly the whole time.
Right.
So it's not like a normal, a hurricane that gets going and kind of builds up all this strength and it starts hauling ass.
Yeah.
To get started. It's like a massive disturbance that I'm thinking about it in terms of like swirling water. Like you run your hand through water you dip your hand down into a pool and you just swipe it by. You'll
Yeah.
see all these little whirlpools like spin off.
Yeah.
And they move away at high speed.
Right.
But like you do that slowly, right?
Yeah.
And you create them you create ones that don't move it away as fast or whatever. That's
Right.
kind of what I was thinking. Like
Yeah.
this cool temperature depression just came along and cruised past this massive landmass all day long. And then goes out into the Gulf and it just creates this whirlpool.
Yeah, and hurricanes are pushed
atmosphere.
by high pressure things. That's really what moves them because they're a low pressure area, and they'll get pushed by some high pressure thing behind them or whatever. And
Right. So this one has high pressure zones on either side of it.
right. So it got sandwiched. Yeah.
Sandwiched by the eclipse. It was an eclipse sandwich. It's very wet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now after that we had all the I thought we were gonna get nailed with rain.
Yeah. Everybody here was flipping out.
I got all prepared.
Yeah.
I went prepper for the Friday afternoon.
Yeah.
And then nothing happened and I was like, what?
Yeah.
And it's been like fall weather all week.
Yeah. Yeah. 4 pounds of ice. We need 40 pounds of ice.
Yeah. Filling up all these water things so I can flush my toilet. I'm assuming we're gonna get stuck
Yeah.
out here in a flood.
I bought an extra pack of smokes.
That's what I was saying. That's what I was saying earlier. I hope there's not a shortage on beers and smokes.
Yeah.
Because screw that.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a run on the gas stations.
That's right. Gonna be smoke shortage. Yeah, because we're behind 3 low water crossings.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to get.
Well,
We got the one right at the bottom of the hill.
you have 3 for sure.
Oh yeah. No, there's 4 there. 5. Right? There's the one that goes across the main road here, and then there's another one that's on the driveway part.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So that's 2 more. But then going out this way, you got the one right at the bottom of the hill. Like you go to the bottom of the hill, and there's that one.
Yeah.
Right? And then there's oh yeah, I guess maybe it's just
There's
2.
only 2 on that road. But still,
Well, there's 2 other ones right next to it because you got the bridge, and then you got the thing before that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but those are kind of the same one.
Yeah.
5. I liked all the stories though of people just dropping everything and going
Yeah.
out there. Like if they had a boat, you just see I saw all these pictures of or videos people had taken. Like, I got rescued by this guy.
Yeah.
He's just a good old boy with a boat.
Dude, it would be great if you just like cruising that Andy Samberg song where you're,
Yeah.
never thought I'd be on a boat.
Yeah.
On the street.
Yeah. I'm on a boat, motherfucker. Take a look at me. Straight sailing on a boat in the deep blue sea.
In the city.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be badass.
But no,
I'm on a boat
We're
and-
laughing and making jokes about it, but seriously, it's we
Yeah.
have friends in Houston, and they've been going through some shit.
Yeah. My parents, like one of our longtime family friends, my parents have a friend up there whose name is Harvey. And I'm just like, what the fuck, Harvey? What the fuck, man? I keep seeing on the news that it says Harvey destroyed Houston. What the fuck, bro? There was other interesting things happening too. Like the night of when the rain was really hitting hard. I was on Reddit, of course, and somebody had this. Okay, so the staff of a nursing home that was in Denton or something like that, in Denton, Texas. I think it was Denton. But they used Twitter and they sent a picture.
Everyone runs into Denton. Dang.
Ding!
Come to our town.
That's right.
Sorry.
Your car will look like it's been hit by hail after driving through Denton. Ding! But they tweeted out a picture of the nursing home, and basically it was like,
Oh yeah.
you saw that?
Yeah. Like chest high water.
Yeah, and they're all these old people are in there. Like she's like knitting and shit. Like it's like they look so calm. I'm like, wow, they're not freaking out.
Yeah.
So a lot of people thought it was a hoax. They're like, that's hoax. It's fake.
Really?
And it was really fascinating because like this is like into the mind of Skepticism, like Skeptards. I'm reading through all this crap that they're saying. And like people are like, why do you think this is fake? It's not fake. Like, rescue people have responded to this and they're going to get them right now. It isn't a fake picture. What the hell? And they're like, it's bullshit. And then it turns out that the reason they think it's fake is because the people look too calm, right? Or the water's too fucking high. Or in other words, there's no reason except for in their minds they can't reconcile this with reality.
Yeah.
It isn't like, it looks photoshopped, but that's what they say. They said it looks photoshopped, but it doesn't look photoshopped. You can't accept that as reality. So that was a really interesting glimpse to me in the
glimpse into the mind of the scriptard.
Scriptards, that's right. Because
cannot accept reality.
Because people were just grilling them on it, like what about it looks fake? Like why do you think which part looks artificial? And it just turned out that they didn't like what the picture was of.
Oh, big mistakey.
I better turn mine down.
I left my ringer on. Sorry.
Fortunately, nobody calls me. Yeah, so that was really interesting. Just the whole deal. Like people kept grilling them on it, and it turned out that they just, they just couldn't accept it.
Check out these pictures.
What? Where did that come from? I've never heard that before. Oh, I pushed this button on Google that I've never pushed before. Olmec fertility statue. Check out these pictures. A bunch of naked statues.
Yep. Oh, the Olmecs.
Yeah, stone porn.
Nobody knows what the Olmecs are. It was something like, because they knew that archaeologists wouldn't accept it, that the archaeology, I guess, establishment, a community, would not accept the Olmecs because they were so old that they just kept gathering evidence for years and years and years, and finally did this huge presentation, like invited a bunch of top people down there and just gave this massive presentation on it. Like, look, here are all these artifacts that don't match anything we know. They're all very, very fucking old, and that was when, but they had to do it secretly instead of you find one thing and you release it or whatever, and then it just gets skirped up to hell and disappears into the basement. They just kept gathering the stuff and didn't say anything about it until they had overwhelming evidence.
Ah, that's a good method.
Yeah.
Overwhelm the scriptards.
Yeah. But it's weird though, because I think that while that method worked in the sense, it confused the issue, because Olmec is like a catch-all term for stuff that's older than it's like 3000 BC and previous.
Huh.
And it's like everything, and they just gave that. No one knows what these people were called, or even if they were one people, they could have been many.
Oh, okay.
Because you look at some of the different, if you look up Olmec artifacts on Google Earth, Google Images, excuse me, they don't look the same. Like you'll see the huge basalt heads,
Yeah.
But then you see all these little sculptures and just various artifacts or whatever. And you're like, how do they know these are from the same culture?
Huh.
But yeah, whenever I think of the Olmecs, it always reminds me of the whole thing. Like, what's the deal with stuff being thrown down in pits and buried with a bunch of burnt stuff? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's so many of that. Like in China, they were uncovering these huge masks and other statues or whatever that had protruding eyes.
Yeah, I've seen those.
You remember those? Yeah. And they were always found in pits, like a deep pit that somebody had dug and then thrown a bunch of shit in there and set it all on fire and then buried it.
Destruction of temples. Redaction.
Yeah.
But that reminds me, one of the things I was wanting to talk about was I can't remember the guy's name, but it's the Pyramid of the Plumed Serpent, whatever, in Mexico.
Kukulkan.
And it's in the same area as
It's in Teotihuacan.
Yeah, in Mexico City.
Yeah.
Right, with the temple, with the Pyramid of the Sun, Pyramid of the Moon, and all that.
Yeah.
But it's like a different one. It's not made the same. It's a different type of construction, and they think it's older than all that other stuff, right?
Yeah.
Well, It's the one with all the serpent heads that stick out of the sides of the staircases as it goes down. Speaking of floods, this guy a couple of years ago, the main archaeologist there, comes to work one day after a big flood, and there's this sinkhole in front of the pyramid, and he goes up there with his light and he shines it down and he doesn't see anything.
Wow.
And it's way down there. So he has.
So they covered it over?
No. Oh, they built a tent around the sinkhole. Okay, 'cause it was actually.
I mean, the ancient people.
There was an entrance elsewhere.
Oh, okay.
Right. There's actually an entrance that has a sort of a.
So they knew about it, but it didn't go all the way to the surface at the time.
They didn't know about it.
Oh.
They did not know. So they did not know about this. It was basically a sinkhole, and he has them lower him down into it.
I mean, the ancient people, they didn't know about it? I'm sorry. I'm confusing your story.
Well, yeah, somebody knew about it because it was built.
Okay.
The sinkhole was just one part of the shaft because it's this massive tunnel under it goes all the way under the center of the freaking pyramid.
Yeah.
Right? And then comes out into the plaza. Same
Right.
way as we were talking about recently, the one that they just found under the Pyramid of the Moon. Same deal.
Yeah.
Pretty much the same deal.
They're all connected, yeah.
So, but of course they're always surprised. Oh my God, there's a tunnel under this pyramid. Yes.
Yeah. There's always a tunnel under the pyramid.
Damn it. so yeah, he has them lower him down in there, and it's way down. I can't remember it's really deep. And he gets down there and he realizes it's a tunnel. And he's come in through the ceiling of part of it that had collapsed in, and it was all this rubble and everything in there. So the flood somehow weakened the ground above part of the tunnel, and it collapsed. So they build this tent around the hole, and they begin excavations. Takes them a long time.
Yeah.
They get all this shit out of there, and they're taking it out like, one grain of sand at a time.
Yeah. That's why they're all uniformitarians and freaking. Yeah. That's how they move.
Yeah.
Freaking toothpicks and dedication.
Yeah. Thank God archaeologists did not dig the Grand Canyon. Okay. Anyway.
It would still be a little ditch.
Yeah. And they would be going, we don't have the funding. No, you can't dig in it.
Right.
Well, we can dig it fast. No. Anyway, they get down there. They clear out the part that caved in, and the whole. They realize that it's a tunnel, but it's like full of debris, like all the way through.
So is it purposely filled?
It's like it was buried. Yeah. So there's like a gap in the top, right? So it was dug out, built basically, and then there was an entrance that had a descending passage elsewhere, which they eventually uncovered and opened that up, and sort of closed up the hole that was a shaft that they were having to go down into.
Yeah.
And all of the stuff that they're pulling out is just full of artifacts.
Wow.
Like all of these artifacts, and like you were saying, ash and burnt shit.
Yeah.
Bones, all this stuff, animal bones and all this kind of shit. And they're like, oh my God, like it's going to be a tomb. So of course they don't know who built this pyramid.
Or the whole city.
Yeah, but they think they know who built the city.
Yeah.
But that this pyramid, what were you saying, Kukulkan or whatever?
Kukulkan, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is basically Quetzalcoatl, the plume serpent.
Right.
Yeah.
If I have this right, they think that this one far predates that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
And they don't know. They think it was a totally different culture because that pyramid has this writing all over it. It's got this hieroglyphic type writing that no one's ever translated.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's got these symbols all over it, and the artifacts that they were pulling out had the same writing on them.
Ah.
So it's presumably the same culture that did this burial.
Or somebody came along later and burned all their shit and threw it in this tunnel.
Threw it all in this tunnel.
Yeah.
But dude, oh my God, like so it takes them years to excavate all this. And this guy, the guy that was doing it, he's pretty cool, but he's still sort of a standard modelist in Mexico terms.
Right.
Which they're a lot more open.
Yeah.
They leave a lot of things to question as opposed to Egyptologists who are just like, yeah, we know.
Right. And
which I think is cool.
American archaeologists are terrible about that too.
Yeah. So I think that's cool and respectable, but they still kind of, they're still toeing the line a little bit.
Right.
And they're just like, we know the pyramid. They've never found any tombs at any Mexico pyramids.
Right.
Right. But they're like, they're tombs pretty much. So they're thinking that this tunnel is going to lead them to a tomb of. But they also
The king and queen of the
there's this theory that there was like the kings and queens. There was a different type of deal. I don't know how they think they know this stuff about the system for this pyramid, but they're like maybe it'll be full of a bunch of like it'll be like a crypt for the royalty is what they were kind of thinking. So they get all the way back to the very back and they found nothing, no human remains. No tomb. And in the very back of the tunnel, there's two things on either side of the tunnel. There's like
antechambers.
A T. Yeah. It tees off and there's two antechambers and they're deep. So they're like, well, they haven't found the floor yet of those two things. So they're excavating them. They're like, yes, this is where the tombs are, right? This is the tomb. They finally get all the way to the bottom of it. No tomb. But that's where they start finding the mercury. Liquid mercury. And it turns out that the entire floor of these antechambers, or whatever they are, the rooms on...
They're shafts if they went down like that.
Well, they went down, but they were sort of rooms, right? That they were just deep. They had a deeper floor. I don't know how many feet down, but it was a deeper floor. On the floor, the whole floor is contoured like a map, a topographical map. And they think that maybe the mercury, because the mercury settled in these pools and little lines, snaking lines like rivers and lakes.
Yeah.
So like the whole thing was a freaking badass like map or something.
Holy shit.
Yeah. I was like, dude. But they throw, in the story, they're kind of just like, we think it may have been a map, but we're really upset that we didn't find any tombs. I'm like, holy shit, dude. Number one, liquid mercury, again, at the bottom of a freaking pyramid, underneath a pyramid. And in this case, the other thing was the whole tunnel in the shaft had pyrite, fool's gold, little tiny crystals put into the wall.
Whoa!
All the ceiling of the whole shaft, all the way down. So in dim candlelight, it just lit up like stars. So they're like the whole ceiling of this shaft looks like stars, and then down in the bottom of these chambers are these contour maps with liquid mercury in the bottoms. And I'm just like, holy shit, dude, you have made an amazing freaking discovery and you're upset that you didn't find freaking a tomb.
That sounds exactly like the Chinese legends of that guy's tomb, that the ceiling was covered in stars and that he was, the legend says that he's like, they built his castle under the ground in the tomb and surrounded it with a moat of mercury or whatever, so that like he's on this island in a lake of mercury that reflects the ceiling, which is covered in stars.
Oh my god! And then also, I've been reading that Robert Bauval book that you gave me, and he's talking about the pyramid text,
the Orion correlation,
the Saqqara pyramids, or whatever. The ceilings of those chambers inside the pyramid, completely covered in stars. Yeah. But they're painted.
Yeah, they're painted stars, yeah.
But there's like thousands of them all over the ceiling. So, once again, like one in China, one in Mexico, one in Egypt. The same thing.
Yeah.
It's just hard for me to believe that on the one hand, that these are tombs at all. I mean, there's just nowhere where there are pyramids are they finding freaking tombs.
Right.
I mean, there's a few small pyramids that are more recent.
Yeah.
But these really old ones,
yeah, they were never tombs.
They're not tombs, and they all have these subterranean chambers and tunnels.
Yeah.
That have very strange things. And that was the other thing I was going to ask you. The subterranean chamber in the under the Great Pyramid. Have they fully excavated all that stuff? Because I remember there was like all the rubble that the earlier people had dug out of.
Yeah.
When they were trying to find the chambers inside the Great Pyramid, they had just thrown it down in the bottom.
Yeah, and then whoever dug the well shaft.
Yeah.
Which is.
So have they fully excavated like everything out of the subterranean chamber in the under the Great Pyramid?
I'm not sure. I know that there is, when you get down to the subterranean chamber, there's another pit, and like when you look at pictures of it, you can see it's kind of got a railing on it. And I've never seen pictures down in that pit, so I don't know. And
I thought they said it was built on a natural spring, like what used to be a what do you call it? Like an aquifer shaft or
Yeah.
natural cave.
Yeah.
So have they excavated all the way through that?
I don't know. I don't think so. I'm not sure. That's what I'm saying. I've never been able to confirm or whatever. But I know that there's also another tunnel that heads off into the rock away from the subterranean chamber, and it just like dead ends. Like,
Yeah.
and the ceiling of that chamber too is all it isn't flat. It's like, it's contoured.
Yeah.
You know, people say like, "Oh, they didn't finish it, or it's really raw," and I'm like, I don't think that's what's happening.
Yeah, they pretty much did everything on purpose.
Yeah.
It's kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah.
But so I've been thinking recently after looking into this Mexico stuff that there's so much stuff in Mexico, and the environment, the archaeological community there, the whole environment for research and discovery seems a lot more open
Yeah.
in Mexico.
Yeah.
And
The only time they hesitate is when they're talking to Americans, because the American archaeological community is so, just like they're real rigid.
yeah. But I'm just thinking in terms of like my aspirations, like I want to go there. Like
Yeah.
if I had the opportunity to go see the Great Pyramid or to go down to Mexico
Yeah.
and like walk to the edge of the cut jungle beside a pyramid and just freaking go,
Yeah.
because you can.
Yeah.
Like I took a trip with Laura. We went to Cozumel
Cozumel.
and rented a Jeep and drove off to the nearest ancient site that I could find on a map or somebody told me about or whatever. And they had been clearing it out. I think we talked about this one time.
You told me about it. I don't think we talked about it on the show, though.
So yeah, we get there and I just remember the main area that they had cleared where you kind of approach the whole place. There was this large building, and they had rebuilt like some thatch roofs or whatever over these sites to make them look like what they thought the buildings looked like.
Yeah.
They were stone walls and slabs, basically, not slabs, but
Big
foundations.
flagstone. Oh, yeah.
Foundations, right, of very large stones. And all over the place, like in the grass and dirt around there was a couple of really big building areas that they had built the roofs over. And inside there were the red ochre handprints and everything all over the walls. Eerie looking stuff.
It is eerie, yeah.
But in the grass and everything all around were these massive boat stones for like grinding. Mm-hmm. Huge. Like I could not lift half of one. Like
Wow.
they were broken. Some of them were just broken pieces of them just laying around. Like they
Wow.
were just, these are just massive freaking grinding artifacts that no one
island.
can lift.
Yeah.
So we're just leaving them over there, half sticking out of the ground. So I'm like, what else is freaking buried under there?
Yeah.
But anyway,
Did they have raised roads? Or
yeah. So there's this huge road that leads from this main, the biggest foundation that has this wall in the center of it that has all the red ochre paint and hands and like tiny little hands, big hands,
I think
all
those
the way
are
around it.
later.
Yeah, probably. But of course they were like, these are what the people did.
Right.
you know?
Yeah, they build these badass, amazing stone buildings, and then they're like,
Put handprints on
putting
it. Yeah.
handprints all over it.
So this was a really strange thing. At the time, I didn't know a whole lot about, I had not done a lot of research on, all of these ancient
Yeah.
megalithic structures and whatever. I don't know if they would call this megalithic. They were big freaking rocks. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
But, and all cut too,
That's megalithic, and yeah.
But they had built these
Cyclopean, I think we call it.
long straight roads, and the roads were a couple of feet risen off the ground.
Yeah.
Very flat tops, about 12 feet wide. Straight line, boom, just way off. And it's in this thick jungle that they had cleared completely, cleared it back. But it was only, they'd cleared it like maybe 20 feet on either side of the road or whatever. So it's this big sort of easement.
Yeah.
And this road just goes straight away from this thing for a long way. And I walk way down it. And like halfway down the end or whatever, there's just this building, this little structure about 15 feet tall, maybe something like that. And it pretty much fills the road.
Yeah, so it can't be a road.
But it's made of the same stone, same building style, and it's a room. But
Yeah.
there's tiny little windows in the around the thing that you can look in and see that it's an actual open space inside there, but there's no door.
Wow.
It's just an open chamber in there,
but no way to access it.
Yeah, a person can't get in.
It's a resonant chamber.
I don't know.
Weird. But that also makes the road not a road because
it's not a road because this thing completely covers the whole thing and it's built of the same stuff, like the same.
I wonder if those are the tops of walls.
Oh my god, that would be badass.
Yeah,
like those were light.
That's what it sounds like is tops of walls, and and you got the light towers or the ramparts or whatever up there. I have no idea.
I just remember that not being. I'm like, you can reach your arm in there and stuff, but you could not. Maybe a child could get into it, but there was just no way for a grown person to get inside this thing. Anyway, the road keeps on going, and there's another one of the. Then there was like a sort of a circular thing where it widens out and goes around some other building in the way.
Yeah.
That was more open, and then it keeps on going, and then boom, right into a wall of jungle.
Yeah.
And I go to the edge of it, and I'm just like pulling the jungle apart and like looking like what. And I turn around and just look down this thing, and I'm like, what is this?
Yeah.
And they're like, this is the road for blah, blah, and ceremony and worship and, bullshit, all of their fake stuff that they made up about things that they don't understand.
Right.
They built this massive road for. And I'm just like, what the? No.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know, therefore temple.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it was. Temple of this, temple of that,
Yeah.
worship of that, and fake stories.
Right.
But it was a fascinating place, and it was right there in Cozumel. The people there are freaking awesome.
Oh, cool.
They're just so friendly and helpful. Super cool.
Sweet. I would love to go there and see that because I've heard of those the straight roads that just go off into the jungle, and I agree they're not roads.
Yeah.
And I don't think we know what they are.
I found one place where I like slipped into the jungle, found some openings or whatever, and found this little cave off to the side of the place. But I didn't have a flashlight. I totally came unprepared. I was like I was on a cruise ship, and I was like, wait, we're in Mexico. Pyramids! I was on my honeymoon, so I was like, just let me have this one day.
Yeah. To get lost and die.
Yeah.
Forever.
And eaten up by the biggest mosquitoes I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Laura was very, very cool. She stayed there miserable with me. She was having a tough time, but we were both getting just destroyed by these mosquitoes. But I didn't care.
Yeah.
I was just like, show me more pyramids. Where do these go?
And that was before you had researched anything, but we need to take a break. So we'll come back and talk about more pyramids and giant mosquitoes and bloodsuckers when we come back.
Snake bites. SnakeBros. We're back. Talking about pyramids and hurricanes and eclipses, apocalypses, and snakes. That's right. So yeah, I wanted to go back to the eclipse. You were telling me some stuff about it.
Yeah, the totality is completely different. Like if anybody who saw the eclipse, a partial, even all the way up to 99%, totality is something completely different. Like it only lasts for a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes, and it's a very short window when the moon completely occults the sun. Like it totally covers it. And if you go online, you can find pictures of people took things called the diamond ring, where basically like either right before or right after the moon is completely covering the sun. So like right before it completely covers it, there's like this ring of light, and then there's one bright flash.
Yeah.
Right? It looks like a diamond ring. That single bright flash of the sunlight still, it's so much light and so much energy or whatever that the sky will still be blue and all that shit. But as soon as the moon totally covers, it just fucking changes everything in the environment around you. Like everything turns purple because it, you know, most of the light of the sun is blocked. All you're getting now is the light from the corona, which is the atmosphere of the sun around the moon. Mm-hmm. So like the sky goes dark purple, and then everything around you looks weird. It's like it's not dark. It's not like nighttime because even with the sun totally occulted in the sky, it's still many times brighter than the moon. Yeah. Like when the full moon is up during the, you know, how bright that can be. Everything's silvery, right? It's a gray silvery, like when the full moon is up. So this is like that, but it's many times brighter than that. So it's like a weird nightfall deal. The temperature drops 10 degrees almost instantly. It's like, think of it when you got a fire going and you're kind of sitting in front of the fire, and for a minute somebody walks between you and the fire. Like instantly, it's cool. Like you stop feeling the heat. This is the same deal. When the moon covers the sun, the moon covers the sun, it just drops 10 degrees like almost instantly. Yeah. You know, and then the wind picks up because of that. So like it's like whoosh, everything turns purple. Right. It gets weird, and then you can see the corona. So like up until that last little spark of sunlight is gone, the sky's still blue and stuff because it's still lighting up everything. But as soon as it covers it over, suddenly it gets dark enough to where you can see some stars and you can see the atmosphere of the sun, which is it'll be these huge looping arcs of bright. It makes some people like cry. It's so beautiful when it happens. It just, you know, and it's instant. So that's why I was like, I really want to go up there. You know, we would have had to travel, and it would be an 8-hour drive from where we were to get to the closest place, but we were hoping our boss would fly us, but he didn't do it. He didn't do it. But then the partial eclipse happened down here, and he was like, wow, that was really cool. And we're like, yeah. So next time there's another eclipse passing through in 2024. Yeah. And I mean, we're right in the path of totality. Yeah. It's going through Kerrville, which is like,
yeah, if we survive this apocalypse.
Right.
But yeah, I wanted to go back to that because I'm still sort of surprised by this realization or glimpse that I had of I was thinking about all of these ancient cultures that built shit based on the sun and the patterns of motion in the sky, and it's like it's such a big deal. You know, I don't know, I wasn't there, but there's these massive monuments all over the place that point to these alignments. And
right.
So
they target solstice or equinox sunrises, or they target eclipses. It all has to do with weird astronomical alignments.
Right. So there's this, the
end of the Mayan calendar was the alignment of the sun with the galaxy. And,
right.
Yeah.
So there's the whole idea of like, it's like all these monuments seem to be themed in that they are reminding us that we're on this rolling ball in space.
That's right.
And there's other rolling balls out there doing stuff. And every now and again, the rolling balls, this rolling ball passes the other rolling ball, and we're on the rolling ball, we're going to be seeing it all. Yeah. So it's kind of one thing to think about it like that, but it was another thing leading up to the eclipse when I was actually noticing the alignment coming into it, by watching the moon rise and shit, and I was just like, holy fuck, it's happening. And nowadays we have the internet, so I had been for weeks reading news stories and seeing comments and everything about all the people that were getting excited and making preparations to go witness this occurrence.
I was reading about how millions of people were flooding into these little towns.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was just, but it was just like all the buzz online. So it was just like all this buzz of humans all over the United States in this one area, just like, whoa, eclipses, we're rolling ball in front of the other rolling ball while we're on the rolling ball, and fuck yeah. And so, that was kind of comical, but then combining that with getting the real idea of where I was watching the moon rise and seeing how close it was and that it was coming together. And at the same time thinking about pyramids, and all these ancient sites and the ancient people and the great mystery of why they did what they did.
Yeah.
And it was just like it all clicked for a moment, and I still have this feeling from it. It's like God, like it was really powerful. And so when you were describing the path of totality and those things, I'm thinking like, man, like I only got like a little glimpse of the actual occurrence, right?
Yeah.
That everyone was freaking out about, and it was so badass.
Yeah, where we were, it was like I said, like 61%, I think, was what we got, and it was. I got a ton of pictures with multiple cameras, and I was using welding lenses and the torch goggle lenses we've got, and combining them in different ways. And I had the big tripod. I got mom and dad out on the. I've got pictures of this. It's hilarious. I was like, look, it's because you're having to look up or whatever. I was like, look, it's really easy. Just lay down on the driveway, right, and get the binoculars. But you only use one side of the binoculars, so you're holding it, and you have to hold it off the side because if you're looking up at even with the eclipse up to 60%, if you put both of the lenses of the binoculars to your eyes. But I only have one welding lens that I can cover. And so like I tried this at first. I put it up there and I put one lens on there and I was holding it up, and then like it burned my eyelid on the other side. I had it closed, but I was looking up at the sun, and of course the lens is the optics of the binocular on the other side where my eye was closed was like magnifying the sun's light, and it's like psh, I'm like ow.
Spurned your eyelid.
Yeah, I'm like damn it. Okay, so you have to hold it to where you're using the binocular as a monocular.
Yeah, and the other eye is out off the side of
and
your
like
head.
make sure that it's not touching your ear, because then I hold it up there and I'm like my ear, right? Damn it. So when mom was doing it, because she has long hair, she's looking up there and I'm having to put my hand out to block it from hitting her hair, because it would have started burning. So I'm like, are you done yet? Switching my hands out because it's like, ow, it's hot.
Just put the lens cap on the other way, damn it.
Yeah, I didn't have a lens cap. But I got a picture of them both. They're laying down in the driveway, holding up binoculars weirdly in the wrong place, and like looking through and holding plastic things that are welding lenses on top. It just like completely nerdy. It's hilarious.
That's funny.
But yeah, I got a bunch of pictures. I need to process them and look at them, because a bunch of weird optical effects happen too. Like I don't know if you saw.
Yeah, I had these glasses that Archer gave me, so I was just standing out there staring at it.
Okay.
It was badass, but I didn't look through any magnifiers.
Cameras. In cameras, I kept getting this thing where I'm looking up there at it, and I've got the lens. I've got the welding lens, and it's a number 11.
Yeah.
Pretty standard over the lens of the camera or whatever. And I was getting these weird, where it's like you see it was the sun looking like the moon, okay, because the moon was like 60% occulting it. Right. So you see like this moon-shaped sun, like it's a
crescent.
Yeah, a crescent. But then they were everywhere in the picture. Like you see the actual one, but then there's like 6 or 7 of them all around it that are reflections or mirages or something weird happening.
That's odd.
Yeah, it was a bunch of them, and I'm like, why are there so many? I knew that like you have the glass of the lens of the camera, and then the glass of the welding lens. But I'm like, why are there like 6 or 7 or 8? There were shitloads of them. So I need to look at the pictures. The other thing I'm interested in is, did anybody do the Foucault pendulum experiments?
Oh yeah.
They're probably not going to tell us.
Yeah, there was one big one, and the whirlpool from it is still spinning over there in the Gulf.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah. But I was really just like trying to.
But yeah, seriously though, think about that, because sorry to interrupt you, but the Foucault pendulum thing. The thing about that is, like, normally if you just have one and it's going back and forth and you're not under an eclipse or whatever, it will normally, over the course of an entire year, if you keep it going, it will rotate once around its axis. It'll go all the way around. That's why they have the thing in, well, maybe it's not completely around, but they have the things in museums where they've got the huge ones.
Yeah.
I know there's one in...
I thought it went around in a day, but I don't know.
No, because you'll see these markers that are like months.
Oh, okay.
The name of the months. And
really big ones.
They're standing up or whatever, and then like when the thing gets close to that month, it like knocks it down, and now it's August, and it keeps going, and then eventually it'll get to the next one, and knock that one down. I've seen ones like that. I've seen ones that have day markers, but I've never seen one where they have every freaking day, where it knocks
Yeah.
one down for every day. But there's ones where big ones, they're usually triangles that stand up like blocks of wood. Mm-hmm. And it's got the names of the months on it. And then you'll see smaller triangles that have the numbers of, this is the first day, this is the 5th day, or whatever. The 10th day, 20th. But supposedly, underneath totality, the pendulum stops turning like that. It acts differently. So like, but the idea of like,
So if the Coriolis effect is causing it, and then it somehow under totality the Coriolis effect is negated, then that would cause storms. Because outside the path of totality, you would still have this Coriolis effect affecting the atmosphere.
Yeah, but so I've thought about it, and I don't, because the Coriolis effect is caused by the spinning of the planet.
Yeah.
So it can't be that, because you're right, it spins once a day, so that would imply that the pendulum should...
Well, it just depends on how big the pendulum is.
No, I don't think so.
Because if you have a really small one, its frequency is going to be so much higher.
Right, but it has to do with the actual momentum of the pendulum itself. It's kind of like, if you rotate something, it's got momentum going
Right.
along the axis. Well, a pendulum is close to that. It's swinging, right? It's an oscillation. So it has a momentum.
Yeah.
That's not like this way and then that way and this way and that way, but it's something along that goes through the axis or whatever,
or it's perpendicular to the axis.
So I think because in other words, that momentum wants to stay where it is. So it's the orbit of the Earth around the sun that causes the slow change as the thing attempts to keep that vector the same.
I was assuming that they made the pendulum long enough to where the frequency was such that they could use it as a calendar. But I thought it was due to the Coriolis effect from the spin of the Earth. Because it works at night.
Yeah.
When the sun's being occulted by the Earth.
Right. So it's something else happening, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, it works at night, but I thought that if it was the Coriolis effect causing the pendulum to turn, then it should do a 360 every day, no matter how big it is.
I don't know.
Because why would the Coriolis force cause it to spin? It's the same deal.
Yeah, but it doesn't. I think that I'm wrong about. Well, I was thinking initially that it would go around in one day, but I think that depends on that might depend on the length of the pendulum itself.
But so that's what I'm saying. How would that work? Because if you're thinking about it, what makes it turn? Whether it's a period related to the length of it or not.
Probably the point when it has no momentum, when it's stopped. So when the pendulum reaches the apex of its the arc,
yeah,
and it comes to rest, then it's under the force of the Coriolis effect being pushed,
but it's
this
not
way, because it doesn't have angular momentum going in one direction already. So
it should be under the force the whole time, though, right?
Right, but it's what I was thinking.
You're saying is right there. It could
while it's in motion, its force is the faster its acceleration, right? As it's coming down to the center line, it has more momentum in the direction that it's moving, and so the Coriolis affects it less until it comes to rest.
Yeah.
Then it would be easier to change its direction. So if you were spinning, a bike tire, and you try to change its direction, the angle, it's hard while it's spinning. But if you stop the bike tire, then you can easily move it the other direction and then spin it again, and it'll be hard to move.
It has inertia, is what you're saying. It has inertia when it's moving fast, and none
so
when
when it reaches the top of the curve, its inertia is at some point at zero or whatever, and so it's under the effect of the motion of the Coriolis effect more, or that's when the curve, it moves it over a little bit, and then it starts building up speed again.
Can change the direction of the vector or whatever.
Right.
And so that would make it so that the higher the frequency, the faster it would go around in a circle.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah. So they make the ones you were talking about. You were saying they're huge.
Because I've seen many different ones that are different lengths, but maybe it's the weight at the bottom too.
Oh, maybe so. Yeah. Probably a lot of factors.
I don't think that's what it is. I think they all, any one of them would rotate the same amount because it's a constant force.
Maybe it is.
Maybe you could be right. I have no idea.
I don't either.
And I couldn't find anything about what it is exactly either. Like when I was trying to read about this, I'm like, well, what is changing during the eclipse? What's different?
That I don't understand. I don't know.
And then of course that makes you ask, well, so what does it do normally? And why does it do that? But I know that this kind of pendulum is one of the ways that one of the things that they've used as evidence that we are a rolling ball.
Yeah.
That we're not a flat plane or anything else. Like we actually are in a sphere.
Take that, flat earthers.
Yeah.
Pendulums, they go around.
Around.
In straight lines.
But yeah, I've been looking for any kind of information. Like, did somebody do this experiment? Did it work? Did they see the same effects or whatever that this guy initially said that he saw?
Yeah, I haven't seen anything about it.
Yeah, they're not going to tell us.
But what I was trying to say is that there's all these ancient sites everywhere that are pointing to these things, and I need to make the correction too.
About the Serpent Mound.
We were talking about the Serpentine Mound, and I was not sure if it was a solar eclipse predictor or a lunar eclipse predictor, and I found out it is a solar. The mouth of the Serpentine Mound is a solar eclipse predictor. It's the summer solstice solar eclipse predictor.
Summer solstice eclipse.
Yeah. Which is like a lot less frequent than just any solar eclipse.
Yeah, it only happens.
Yeah, we're going to have to look that up because I don't know how often that is.
Yeah.
On the summer solstice in that area.
And it's pointing at the astrobleam. So, like, is it implying that there
was a cataclysm after the eclipse, man?
A solstice eclipse.
Yeah. So we were approaching the autumn equinox.
Right. Which
is on the 22nd of September.
Yeah.
And we have this, we have this solar eclipse, and then we have this apocalypse.
It's very local apocalypse, though.
Yeah. But still, great floods. After the sun went black, then great floods came. And then giant chemical explosions. And then no one had gas. I mean, anyway.
Yeah. And of course, it's gas that's saving everybody.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, my prediction is that there's going to be all these news stories about, people with electric cars. So the people with electric cars are like helping people and they're still able to get around and they don't have to worry. Well, all these people with the internal combustion engine are like stuck.
Yeah.
So electric cars are the future. Like, yeah.
Yeah. How many people can you save with your electric boat? 0.5.
You can sure catch some bass. That little electric motor.
Yeah. Yeah. You can have a little fishing boat with a little.
Right.
But you're not going to save anybody with that.
Yeah.
I mean, you might be able to save some, but as soon as you get 4 people in there,
look,
it won't
I'd
move.
be totally down with electric cars if they were nuclear. Come on.
Oh yeah.
Like, give me a tiny little
a
battery-sized nuclear reactor, little AA, thunk, put it in there, drive my car for 1,000,000 years.
Yeah. What was it in Back to the Future? The thing that he had where he's throwing trash in it at the end of the movie. He's like throwing aluminum cans and what was it called? It was like It was Mr. something. This big can or whatever. He's like, where are we going? We don't need roads. And that's what it was in Houston. In Houston, roads.
That's right.
Where we're going, we don't have roads. Yeah, actually, the reason, one of the things about Houston, I lived there for a year. One of the things about Houston is it floods every time it rains. And I mean every fucking time. Every time.
Yeah.
Because the main thoroughfares, the main, not the interstates necessarily, but the main highways in Houston are the flood drain routes. That's just how it is. That's how they designed the city.
Yeah. So when it rains, stay home.
Well,
that's one reason why I think that's one of the reasons why they did not evacuate.
Right, because it was a Category 1.
Yeah.
First it was a tropical storm, and then it became a Category 1 until like the night before.
Yeah,
and you need like a week weeks time to do a real evacuation where you get all the old people out, everybody out of the hospitals.
Yeah. I was talking to Todd, and he was saying that he thought the guy made a good move by not doing that.
Yeah.
Because people, they would have been backed up on all the highways, which would have become the waterways.
Which is like Rita.
That's how they all get
Hurricane
killed.
Rita, right? Like after Katrina or whatever. Because of Katrina and the non-evacuation that killed so many people or whatever, they freaked out when Rita was coming and like ordered an evacuation everywhere. And then people, like over 100 people died in the evacuation attempts, stuck on the roads, starving to death.
That's terrible.
Overheating and, you know, dying from heat exhaustion and shit, just like stuck on the freaking highway. Even though during the hurricane evacuation things, and you'll see this when you're driving around Houston, you see big painted things with a swirly thing on there and it says evacuation route, where they turn both sides of the freeway into like one direction.
Oh.
And it's still, you know, miles and miles and miles of cars just sitting there.
That's crazy.
For days. And you run out of food and you run out of water.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Not cool.
Yeah.
Stay home.
Yeah.
I'd be like, dude.
It was a good move.
So I saw a picture of this other guy who he bought this like porta-dam.
Yeah. Coffer house.
Yeah. It's like this huge thing that you fill with sand. This huge tube bag. And I guess it's like 3 feet tall or whatever. I don't know. But he bought it and like put it together. I guess it cost him like about $8,000 or something. And he filled the whole thing with sand all the way around his house. And there's pictures of it. And it's just like there's just flood water everywhere. And his yard is green grass. And it's like his house is sitting in the middle of this coffer dam.
Yeah, coffer house.
He's like totally cool. It's like, yeah, $8,000. Saved my house.
Man, it would have sucked if it would have gotten just high enough for all the pours over it or whatever. Yeah, I wonder what the pressure is at the bottom of one of those. I mean, how much pressure they can take. I mean, 10 feet of water. I mean, he's probably only in 6 or 4 feet.
I mean, it's sand, so it's a lot heavier than water, so it doesn't matter. Like, however.
No, I mean, how much, because it's got to hold it out. Like, when will it buckle? You know what I mean? At the bottom, because the pressure is higher at the water pressure, PSI, at the bottom of the water.
Yeah, I just don't. It's like the same thing as
an earthen dam.
Yeah, I mean it's sand, so it's heavier than the water. So as long as the water is below the top level, it doesn't matter how much water goes out away from that.
No,
it's
yeah.
not going to increase the pressure against
the height of the water. You know what I mean? Like you have deep enough water, where the pressure at the bottom at the ground.
It's round, too. It's a big tube, like a snake.
Okay.
So it's like if anything, it would just roll. But it's bent, you know. It's in a curve going around his house, so it can't really buckle, I guess.
Okay. I mean, it could. It would take a lot of pressure, though, probably.
Yeah.
You know, like we were talking about the ice dams. Like once you've got enough, if it's jammed up with ice, once you've got enough deep water at the bottom, it's going to blow out because the pressure is so high on the other side.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. It's
ice floats too, so this is denser. You know, it's as wide as it is tall as well. It's round.
So it's like an earthenware dam, or not earthenware, but earthen dam or whatever.
It worked. Oh, I saw the picture. I mean, at least when I saw the picture, it was still working.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's still working. But
cool.
he had a bunch of sandbags too, so it looked like there were some places where the water was like kind of seeping underneath. Yeah. And he piled up sandbags there.
Yeah.
But it's like green grass on his yard. It's just badass.
This is like just water 6 feet on the other side. Yeah. Coffer house.
I think the thing was like 3 feet tall or something. It didn't look that big.
Oh, okay. Still, that would be great.
I don't know. I don't know how tall it was.
Like I know, I remember seeing pictures of like various power plants, like nuclear plant. Like when they build a nuclear power plant now, they put this gigantic berm all the way around it, so that the nuclear plant is basically inside of this huge 20-foot to 40-foot high square or rectangular berm, and the plant's on the inside of that. And basically it hides it from everybody, so you can't see the tower. You know, you don't look out there and be like, "That's nuclear power out there," you know. But there's pictures of them looking like they're islands in oceans, like when it floods, and even if it's just even if it's just a foot of water, like everywhere is just water everywhere, and then you see this square coming out of the water, and there's a plant inside totally dry. You know, it's really interesting. But we live on hills, so it would be hard to flood.
Yeah. It's only the low spots on our roads that are a problem. So
right. I would love for it to like really fucking flood here to where it's like we basically had islands.
Yeah, that would be badass.
You know,
sort of
for a while.
Yeah. After all the death and mayhem was over with, it would be kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe after all the death and mayhem was over with, I'd probably be dead.
Yeah. True.
And yeah, if it seems like we're joking a lot about this flood in Houston, like I feel so much badass stuff is happening. You know, people are getting saved. I know that there is some death toll, but it's just like there was a flood like this in Houston about 100 years ago or so that killed almost 12,000 people, between 6 and 12,000. They're not really sure how many people, and it's like that's horrific, you know. But for this kind of weather event to happen, and then for you to get like the pets, like all the old people, everyone in the hospitals out, even though they were flooded in, you know, they're getting them out, and people aren't dying in mass. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it is.
It's just absolutely amazing. And then the huge drives for like the Cajun Navy, you know, they all come from Louisiana. Oh, we're gonna save people, and they got flat bottom boats and just all this different shit, and they just haul ass into Houston and spread out.
Yeah, it's badass.
They're capturing the looters, which is also awesome. You know, you got first responders going everywhere, and then some area they come back and they're like, yeah, we got shot at over there, and then all the police are like, go there and just kick their asses. It's really awesome, their coordination, and it's amazing to me. It's like I've seen online a whole bunch of people bitching about how did we even let this happen? Like Houston's dumb. Like why is it built in a marsh area? Like this whole town planning, or why didn't they evacuate? Blah blah blah. And I'm like, look what's happening right now. Like all of these people are caught in this flood that like should be killing them en masse right now. They should be dying all over the place, you know, especially the ones that are like in hospitals. Like during Katrina, that was one of the worst deals. Like I was reading this guy's account of, he was not a first responder, but he was a volunteer medical tech.
Yeah.
And he was in the dome or wherever they were bringing in he was like just every day, for every 15 minutes, more people coming to the hospitals. None of them had any of their paperwork. We didn't know what was wrong with them or what was going on. Most of them didn't know, or they couldn't talk, or they were passed out or in a coma.
Oh,
he was like, it was a fucking nightmare. And then a truckload or a boatload of paperwork would show up, and they just dump boxes and boxes, and you're like, you don't know who it's for.
Oh man, that's terrible.
And he's like every day I'm helping people and like going from one person to the next, and he's like, and I don't know if any of them survived. You know, said he had nightmares about all these people. Like one guy was in traction on both arms and legs, and he's like, what happened to him? You know, can't walk, can't swim.
Jeez. So
yeah, he was comparing that to this, and he's just like, it's night and day.
Yeah.
So like that's what I'm saying.
heartwarming.
Yeah, and it's a reason why I feel okay about cracking some jokes about it or whatever, because like it isn't. It's tragic in the sense of people's stuff.
Yeah.
You know, but there isn't a loss of life that's you know, some people are dying, obviously. Some people have already died, but it isn't like a mass tragedy in terms of life lost. So I don't think it's too soon. Maybe some people do.
Yeah.
It's too soon. It's still happening, Russ. Too soon.
I don't think it's too soon.
It's not too soon. Come on. Never thought I'd be on a boat. Come on. On these Houston roads.
Yeah.
T-Pain ought to be up in there, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, I heard also there's this guy that owns this mattress company.
Yes.
He's like turning over all the...
It's like Mattress Warehouse.
Yeah, all these mattress warehouses. Just let people in. Let them sleep.
That's
freaking badass.
Yeah. I also saw that people were using air mattresses as makeshift rafts.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's genius.
Yeah. That happened to me once. We went to Oklahoma to this concert, Rocklahoma.
Oh, yeah.
We went camping, and like right when we get there, massive tornado warning downpour. knocked out all the stages, and I was in a tent on this air mattress, and I woke up floating in my tent on the air mattress. I was like, holy shit, just cruising around inside this tent. There was a foot of water out there.
Okay.
We gotta take another break.
Yeah. Sorry, I've been looking up this pendulum thing. I want to find out.
Okay.
So when we come back from the break,
We're not talking about pendulums when we come back.
but we'll swing back around to it.
Yeah. We're going to talk about the significance of eclipses and ancient sites.
And we're gonna make a pendulum out of snakes.
No!
Welcome back, pendulums and gentlemen. We are Pendulums of the Snake, coming to you from the 10 by 10 by 10 pendulum of science. And we are not here to talk about pendulums.
We're not talking about pendulums. Look,
just swinging through this podcast here, but we're not talking about pendulums anymore.
Look, we gotta have angular momentum in this fucking podcast.
Angry momentum?
We're losing our angry momentum. No, but seriously, let's talk about large weights hanging from small strings.
Yeah, screw that pendulum stuff. Let's talk about these swinging these weights.
Yeah.
Anyway, I did look it up real quick because I do want to get back to the pyramids and eclipses and stuff. But
everything is tied together all the time with fine threads.
Half a pendulum tied behind our back just to make it spin.
Everything is tied together with fine thread.
That's right. And depending on all these things, swings back and forth.
That's right. And it goes in cycles.
That's right.
In
and
reverse.
Precesses, yeah. So I looked it up and I was wrong. And Kyle was wrong, but he was more right than me. I was more wrong than Kyle. He was definitely more right than me. Like you're not holding up to the standards of this show of getting it mostly wrong, bro.
Oh, shit.
You're getting too many things mostly right. So it is Coriolis force based. But what's interesting is like at the North Pole or the South Pole, at one of the poles of the planet, what they said was that the how did they put it? The axis of the pendulum would remain fixed relative to distant objects in space while the planet spins beneath it. So So if you were standing there at the pole spinning and you had a pendulum going, to you it would appear that the pendulum would make a single rotation every 24 hours. It would go 360 degrees around in 24 hours. If you did it at the equator, it doesn't move at all. It remains fixed relative to the Earth. But as you start to move north,
so if you climb the North Pole and attached a pendulum up there, and you swung it,
fuck poles, I climb buoys, motherfucker.
Right. So let's say the sun is over here and you're at the North Pole, and you pull the pendulum back and let it go towards the sun.
Yeah.
Then you stand there and watch it
and freeze to death.
You're gonna actually spin around the pendulum.
Right. The pendulum actually is,
and the pendulum will continue swinging back and forth towards the sun.
That's right. Like the proper way to look at it is the pendulum remains fixed relative to distant objects in space, like the sun.
Right.
And like it looks to you like it's spinning around, but it's not. It's actually staying. Yeah, you're spinning with the Earth, while the pendulum is remaining fixed, which is really interesting. But at the
now, if you the eye that you hang the pendulum from will rotate.
Well, you have to hang it from the sun.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, like presumably, if you built, you had to build a structure to hold the pendulum up, that will turn.
Yeah, the structure.
But the axis of the pendulum itself, which is the way a Foucault pendulum is supposed to work, is that it has no. At the fulcrum where it turns, there's nothing pushing it in any direction. It's like a ball or whatever.
I thought it was cool how they were saying when you pull it back, you get ready to release it.
Yeah, you tie it off with a string.
They tie it off with a fine thread and wait until it becomes
Completely still.
and then they burn the thread.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, you got to burn it.
Yeah.
And then there's some strange motion in there. No, it was probably because the flame
That's right.
was blowing
It's
to the
thermal.
right.
It's thermal induction. Yeah.
So anyway,
So if you're at the equator and you're letting the pendulum go, it won't move relative to the Earth. It will just continue to
it
swing.
will remain fixed
Right.
to the Earth.
It'll just continue to swing back and forth and not change directions. But as you start to move either north or south, it will begin to rotate. And I think it has to do with it's like the sign of the latitude. You have to take the sign of the latitude to get the rotation. So if you move just a little bit north, it'll begin to move clockwise, relative to the sign of the latitude that you're at. So if you
Right.
just move a tiny bit, it'll go 360 degrees in like hundreds of years. But if you get up to like 30 degrees latitude north, it takes like something like 32 hours, something like that. I can't remember what exactly it was, but yeah. So like as you leave the equator, it begins to get faster and faster.
Right.
And because it's a sign, it's going to be a
Right. And the fastest it goes is 1 day.
right
At the poles.
Right. From 0 days or from like infinite number of days, it will never turn to
Right.
1 day. It'll make a complete rotation. So that's a pretty quick drop off.
Right.
So like 1 inch north of the equator, it probably will take it thousands of years.
Interesting thing. So it's the degree at which, from the degree away from the pole. So if you're 90 degrees from the pole, you've got 0 rotation in
Right.
infinite days.
Right.
And then as you decrease 90 degrees,
You move from 0 rotation in infinite days to 1 rotation in 1 day. So, so you can see how there's going to be
That's
this
freaking badass.
exponential curve there,
right.
where as you approach the equator from the pole, the line begins to get steeper and steeper and steeper for how many days it takes for it to complete a 360
Dude, you know
degree
what would be
rotation.
badass? If they made like the Apple Foucault Pendulum. And so you could determine your position on the Earth based on how fast the pendulum was going around.
Yeah.
It's like the pendulum hasn't been spinning for like 5 years. I think I'm on the equator.
That's right. You're in Belize. You're on Cozumel looking at those freaking ruins.
And it could,
So
fuck your heart rate, man.
Yeah.
I want to know.
I want an Apple iWatch Foucault pendulum. It makes your arm swing. So the anomaly that I was talking about is called the Allais effect, and it's
Yep. Go.
skirp derp.
So many skirp derps, but let's
Yeah,
go. No, it's totally legit data.
yeah. It's. I'm still not exactly clear on what it's changing.
Yeah, because they weren't really talking about that.
Yeah.
But they build these pendulum. This one guy, what's his name? The name of the phenomenon.
It's Allais.
Yeah.
Allais.
that guy.
He was an economist, by the way.
Yeah.
There's also something called the Allais anomaly in economics. So he has the Allais. First, he messed up the physicists by saying, "Look at this Allais effect. It messes up all your gravitational theories." And they're like, "What?" And then he goes to economics. He's like, "Look at this Allais effect. It messes up all your economic theories."
Yeah.
So he was winning prizes all over the place for pissing people off. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, they've been skirp derping him ever since.
Yeah.
But he did this in 1960,
Yeah.
1960s.
Yeah.
Built this badass pendulum and a different type of pendulum that I don't know what
Yeah.
that one is.
It's a conical, something I can't remember
Yeah.
what it's called. Yeah. He basically invented it to test the.
Right. So
And you have to chase eclipses. He's like, and then like there's going to be another eclipse. He's like,
yeah. I wonder if he predicted gas shortages after he did that. Okay. There was a gas shortage in this town after an eclipse.
yeah, that's what caused the Allais anomaly in economics.
All right. Anyway, so yeah, he made this pendulum and he tested it under an eclipse and he noticed a deviation from the precession of the spinning of the pendulum.
Yeah, and he actually attributed it to some kind of interference thing happening with the gravity of the sun, with the
Right.
moon, where the moon is basically blocking the gravity of the sun somehow.
Right.
And he said that it completely demolishes all current gravitational hypotheses, whatever they,
Yeah,
all the different ways they think it might be working.
Right.
So,
And so everybody thought that was bullshit, and then
Yeah.
people started repeating the experiment and also getting
Yeah.
similar
Well,
anomalies.
yeah, well, about half of them were able to reproduce his anomaly, And the way it's so misleading when you read news reports like this. They'll say about 50% of the people were able to reproduce his anomaly, and the other half didn't. But when you read into the details, the half that didn't get his anomaly nevertheless got anomalies.
Right.
They just weren't.
They were strictly related to gravity.
Yeah.
As well.
Right. So it's misleading the way they say it. Every test got anomalies under eclipses. They just weren't all able to reproduce his specific anomaly, but they all got anomalies relative or related to gravity or something.
Right.
Related to local. And so they had one of the hypotheses, and I think this was he proposed it, was it has to do with the ether.
Right.
Which
has been basically skirp-derped since Einstein's theory of relativity.
Right. Because the theory of relativity basically puts like that the motion of a body that you're on can't change the relative speed of light.
Right.
But if the ether is true, then the motion of that body passing through the ether, the speed of light will change because it's moving through this medium that's not moving. But if you're on certain parts of the body, like behind it, there's the aether drag theory, which is what he was talking about.
Right.
Like, in other words, behind the planet Earth, as it moves through the ether, it's creating this drag effect, basically making a wake through the local aether. And it was something like 7.95 meters per second? And he predicted that or whatever, and it had to do with this. And then they get that same number in all these different experiments, that there's like this weird...
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, well, it's just a
problem with our model.
Yeah, or they'll say, they say it's like within the margin of error. Just make sure that you make your experiments have an error of 8 meters per second.
Yeah.
Plus or minus.
But it was really interesting because when you first brought this up, I didn't know anything about it, but you had mentioned that story where like everybody's going to be looking up at the eclipse and a bunch of scientists are going to be looking down at pendulums.
That's right.
That's freaking awesome.
Yeah.
So it's a serious thing, and it's like the stories you were reading. He started this thing in like the 1960s or whatever, and then they repeated it all
with eclipses all over the world. Yeah.
Right. And they've been getting all this anomalous activity from these pendulums.
Yeah. It was kind of disgusting at the end of the whole thing where I was reading. They were saying that in order to really test this anomalous effect properly, one would have to go back to the 1960s definition of the meter, because the confidence in Einstein's relativity theories is so great that they have now based the metrology of the meter on the speed of light being a constant.
On the current speed of light at all times.
Yeah.
So as the speed of light changes, they change the length of the meter.
So you can't, right. So you wouldn't be able to detect anything because your meter changes along with the effect. It's just,
It's ridiculous.
So that's why they're saying you have to go back to the 1960s definition.
No, you don't. You just got to go back to the foot. Damn it.
That's right. Just keep using the foot.
Foot doesn't change with fucking
His foot just changes
speed.
depending on who's the king.
That's right. But yeah, we were talking about how the one of the people was talking about something about the moon blocking out some of the sun's gravitational force,
Yes.
so that it made the gravitational force under the eclipse stronger on the Earth.
Yeah, so there's like an indirect increase in the Earth's gravitational field because the sun isn't pulling you away from it.
Right.
That was one possible thing.
Right, and what we were talking about before was the idea of if these planetary bodies and stars and whatever are actually like nodal points in some greater resonance throughout the ether, that and they have like these, they're creating their own resonance in the ether as well.
Yeah, they're creating a localized effect.
Right, that you're going to have interference patterns when two are lined up. Like, so when the sun and the moon line up, the Earth
Relative
is
to
going
Earth. Yeah.
Yeah, the Earth is going to experience these strange interference patterns, which is some of the tests that they did kind of detected these weird oscillations. He was saying that it was a dynamic effect,
right,
not a static.
Right. And the fact that it was dynamic implied that there was some kind of etheric effect.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's badass.
Yeah. I mean, they didn't mention waves in any of it, but you could see them floating behind everything they were saying right there. It's like, yeah, that would be...
They were sort of oscillating back and forth.
That's right.
Whether or not.
They were kind of waffling on the whole thing.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
But still, that takes me back to this idea that, like, in all these ancient texts and all these stories, like earth in upheaval and all that kind of shit. There's always these stories about the sun turning black.
Yeah.
And then all this cataclysmic shit happening afterwards. So if there is some type of strange gravitational anomaly under the path of a solar eclipse, we were talking about volcanoes.
Yeah.
And like in the volcano episode, if you've listened to all the episodes, we had talked about the way they can erupt and explode has a lot to do with the different pressures coming from underneath, and as the magma rises up, the pressure releasing
gas
or changes in
the
pressure
viscosity
will cause gas pockets to just like nucleate and bubble up inside there. So it'd be thinking of it in those terms. This hurricane is totally. Yeah. It's totally plausible that this was caused by the eclipse, not by anthropogenic global warming.
Right. First, you have a massive cone of cooling causing a low pressure area,
and then you have a greater
gravitational pull in that same
low pressure area.
Yeah, man.
So in low pressure areas,
you have condensation.
In low pressure areas you have denser, right? A more dense material, but it's not dense because of. So when things heat up, high pressure areas where they're hot, the air is less dense.
Right. It tends to expand.
Yeah, it expands. It seems sort of backwards, but the expansion is a high pressure area. It's pushing outward. The low pressure areas, the air is more condensed.
Yeah.
And so it's typically cooler.
Yeah, because the pressure they're talking about is temperature.
Right.
Yeah, temperature based.
Right. So not only do you have the cooling effect of the shadow, which causes the condensation or the atmosphere getting denser.
Yeah.
Is that the right way to say that? Denser?
More dense.
More dense.
Yeah.
But you also have a greater gravitational effect in that area.
Yeah, and the gravitational effect is going up and down. It's oscillating because there's this like interference pattern thing happening.
Yeah. So, and then you combine that with the Coriolis effect that's happening in the atmosphere already.
Right.
Which is what the Coriolis effect is, the thing that we're noticing in the pendulum experiment.
The pendulum. Yeah. So that's why their hurricanes in the northern hemisphere are called hurricanes. In the southern hemisphere, they're called typhoons because they spin the other direction.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that the two names were.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. Southern hemisphere, it's a typhoon. There's no hurricanes in the southern hemisphere. No such thing as a hurricane.
I wonder if man-made global warming causes typhoons. No, because America's not down there.
That's right.
Anyway, back to science.
Mercury.
That's badass.
Yeah.
Okay, but so still, like this ancient shit. Come on, help me out here, man. Fucking ancient shit. Pyramids, things aligning, predicting solar eclipses, like the Serpentine Mound.
Yeah.
The impact site. It's like it's all connected somehow.
Yeah. That's one thing I didn't look up that I meant to was the thing about the solstice eclipse.
Yeah, the summer solstice eclipse is what the mouth of the Serpentine Mound is pointing towards.
Yeah, so there must be something special about eclipses that happen on solstices.
Yeah, so that's when the pole is facing the sun.
Oh yeah.
Holy shit.
No, wait.
The pole
you're right.
The pole is like okay, the direction towards the sun from the earth, the pole would be in line with that.
Right. Yeah.
Vector or whatever.
And
on the equinoxes, the pole tilt is sort of perpendicular to the direction of the sun.
Yeah, so on an equinox, the day and night are the same.
Right. So taking this pendulum thing at the equator, where the pendulum doesn't spin.
Right.
We have the solar eclipse very close to an equinox.
Yeah.
Right. The equinox is on the 22nd of September.
Yeah.
So it's passing the Earth across, like almost perpendicular to the poles,
to the axis of the Earth. Yeah.
But on the solstice eclipse,
it's pointing right at it.
Which that's when the greater effect on the Coriolis.
Yeah, and also they used to say it that the sun stood still. So like on the solstices, either one, because of the tilt of the axis and the motion of the Earth around the sun actually tracks a pattern in the sky.
Yeah.
It's called, I can't remember what it's called right now, but it's basically a figure 8. And depending on where you are on the planet, the figure 8 is going to have a different shape. Like the bottom will be real big and the top is small if you're in the northern hemisphere. Yeah. And the farther north you get, but it's going to be a figure 8 laid on its side, mostly on its side. At the very extremes of the 8, so when the sun is all the way to the left or all the way to the right or whatever of the figure 8, those are the solstices.
Yeah.
The equinox is where the figure 8's where it crosses.
Right.
Okay. But if you're watching it every day, and I've done this up at the top because we watch the sunset a lot, and you can see that it's setting over here, way over here to the left.
Right.
And then as the year progresses, it sets farther and farther to the right until it's way over here.
Right. So on the equinox, it's in the middle of that path.
That's right. On the solstices, that apparent motion of the sun where it's setting, as it directly between the solstice and the equinox is the quickest movement. Like each day it moves farther, but as it approaches the extreme end of the 8, it appears to stop and stand still for 3 days.
Right, which is one of the things in the ancient texts.
That's right, the sun stood still in the sky.
So on the solstice, some shit happened, and then everything happened.
Right, so the sun stands still, turns black. I mean, like there's all these same things in the legend. The sun disappears, turns black in the sky, like nighttime, stands still. All this stuff is like...
And then it rains fire and all that because volcanoes start going off.
Right.
Because of crazy freaking Coriolis gravity problems.
Right. It's because of Roman chariots.
Oh, yeah. And there was just
too many horse flatulence.
Error in their models.
Damn it, all these Romans driving chariots around with their horse flatulence causing Roman warming. Roman warming.
Dude, that's badass though. Damn it.
So we know at least the Great Pyramid is a model of the northern hemisphere of the Earth, right? And where it is, I'm trying to think this through. Like, so where it is on the planet
is on the 30th degree or somewhere.
33rd degree, something like that. It's really close to and it's also in the center of mass of all of the land masses on the whole planet. If you like flatten it all out into a Mercator projection or whatever, it's right in the middle. So it's like a navel.
Yeah.
What do they call it? The omphalos. I don't know how to say the word, but it basically means the navel of the Earth.
Fucking old geezers.
Yeah, old geezers.
Bunch of old geezers made that shit. But yeah, I just like after seeing all the hype and then getting excited about it myself and then kind of seeing like putting myself in the shoes of these or trying to imagine like the excitement of these ancient peoples when they were observing these various, astronomical phenomena. It was like, I don't know, something clicked like, dude, this is a big fucking deal.
Yeah. The Shinto religion is based on this.
I don't know anything about the Shinto religion, but it sounds cool.
It's the Japanese. It's on Japan. They've got Buddhism. They're mostly Buddhist. They have the temples and everything. But the most ancient, like sort of prehistoric religion that's still, I don't know if worshipped is the right word, but this idea is still followed there. Is called Shinto, and their story. The story that they tell, so if you go to research Shinto, the first thing you see is their sort of myth, their legend, right? The Shinto myths or whatever. And it has to do with the moon and the sun, and they're characterized as people. So you have the moon is this female, right? She's the goddess of the night or whatever. And then you have the sun, and he's a male, and they're married or whatever. And she flees from him, right? And or maybe it's the sun. I don't know. But anyway, the idea is there's this cave, okay? And one of them flees into a cave.
Yeah.
I can't remember if it's, I think it must be the sun that they're talking about. The sun, so it's the moon occults the sun during an eclipse. But you see that these ancient peoples are watching it, and they think the sun goes into a cave.
Yeah.
Because they see it passing into this dark spot or whatever, and they think that a rock rolls. There's this. The way they describe it in the myth is that a rock is rolled over the entrance of the cave.
Yeah.
So you have the
roll away the stone.
Yeah, you have the round stone rolling across the sun, and so in the Shinto religion, they have gates. The two main things you see in Japan. You got these Shinto gates that are basically just they're the Tao symbol, the two uprights and then a thing going across, and it's kind of bent. It looks like the pi, but the capital one. It's called the Tao. Those are Shinto gates, okay? Because it's the gate of the gate of the cave, the entrance. And then they have these huge boulders whenever they find anywhere on Japan where there's a big, massive, like erratic, or a gigantic stone. That's they seal it. They put these huge ropes around it and hanging from the ropes are these diamond shaped boards that have not hieroglyphs, but the kanji on them or whatever that are basically sealing spells. And they're supposed to, because this is supposed to be the stone that had rolled in front of the cave entrance that was cast aside by the deity that went to get the sun out of the cave, right? So he cast it aside, it lands in Japan, and then they seal it off so it can never cover the cave again. So that's why you see in Japan these huge rocks with these ropes going around them or whatever with all these weird things hanging from it, And it's just like, it's the same deal. Like you have these pyramids, but you see all over the world, the ancient peoples responding to these astronomical things happening.
Yes. So why? Because they must have been fucking serious.
Yeah.
Like there must have been something that they understood about them that perhaps we don't get other than just like, oh, let's go to the state park and look at totality. Take some pictures, buddy. Post them on Facebook.
Yeah. There was a post on Reddit a couple of days ago where the guy was like, so this is great, guys. Look, these solar eclipse glasses that I ordered a month ago, they finally showed up. And it was like days after the eclipse, and he's got a picture of them.
Yeah. Dude, I watched the sunset the other day with mine. I was like, I just stood out there and watched it like, hell yeah. These are badass. I just need to know what the sun's doing, man.
Yeah, you gotta know what the sun's doing.
Like, I'm hoping that one day I'll just throw the glasses on and look up at the sun and there'll be some weird shit going on up there.
Spaceships. I did this experiment with a telescope. I have these telescopes, and one day I was like, I want to use a telescope, but it was still daytime. But I really wanted to use a telescope. What can I look at in the daytime? The sun. So I did the same thing. I got a welding lens and put it over the eyepiece. Right, so I basically have the telescope pointed at the sun, and I put the welding lens on the eyepiece, and then I was able to look down through it, and I could just look at the sun with the telescope, and it was amazing. It was amazing. I mean, like I could actually see the disk of the sun and see sunspots on it.
Yeah,
little dark dots all over the sun or whatever, and I was able to get a camera on there and take pictures where you could see these sunspots, and then I was able to project it huge, like I just turned the telescope. Or whatever, and then I was able to like I had an empty pad, like one of my drawing pads, and I just flipped it to an empty page, and then held it up to where it just projected the freaking picture of the sun, huge on the pad, and I could see badass. It was badass. And then I'm taking pictures of that. But yeah, I could put some of those pictures in the show notes. I still have them where you can see sunspots on there.
That's cool.
Oh, and over the course of days, as I continued to do it, you could see the rotation because I think it rotates once every 11 days or something like that. Maybe it's 25 days. I don't remember. But the sun also rotates, and you could see the rotation by the movement of the sunspots as they went around. Yeah.
That's cool.
Welding lenses.
Yeah. Or sun lenses for telescopes. You can get those too.
Yeah, they're basically welding lenses.
The little eyepiece.
Yeah.
It has a little dark one.
Yeah. Yep.
Green. They make it look green.
They do make it look green.
We got to take a sun break.
What?
Snake sun. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
whatever.
Take a break.
Fine.
It's time's flying by.
I don't even know what I'm looking at anymore.
The pendulum of time is continuing to precess.
But it precessed a little bit, so we got a couple more minutes. No, I'm joking. All right, we'll take a break.
SnakeBros.
SnakeBros.
We're back, ladies and gentlemen. The final segment of the final hour of the final snakes of the final sun pyramid eclipse hurricanes.
And if it seems like this episode's kind of weird, it's because it's episode 21 and we're fucking hammered. Not really, but the episode is hammered. You know.
So we're gonna change gears here to a something that Russ has been really interested in for a long time and coming to me and telling me crazy stories about. We've talked about it a little bit. It's the missing 411 cases.
Yeah.
And generally the study done by David Paulides.
Yeah, and his team.
Yeah, he's written multiple books filled with all these cases of these unsolved missing persons cases that have strange, just anomalous occurrences or just really strange details. And across all of the stories that he's picked, they have these similarities in these extremely strange details. And Russ has particularly picked some out. We've discussed it a lot, not on podcast, but theorized about what could be going on.
Yeah. So the basic idea is he started out looking at missing people in national parks, national and state parks, basically like deep wilderness areas. And he did that, he said, because, well, for one thing, he was kind of tipped off by a couple of park rangers. He was at a park for some unrelated business, and he went back to his cabin, where he was staying that night, and these two park rangers came and knocked on his door, and they said, "Hey, we know who you are. We know about your other research or whatever, and we think that you should take a look at missing people in the park systems."
Now, what was he before this? He was a police officer?
He was a police officer, I think in California. He did his 20 years in the force, retired, and then he went to work in the private industry as a security consultant. And he worked, like right after he retired, he said he was thinking like, okay, I'm done. I'm cool. I got my pension and everything. And then somebody called him up and was like, "Hey, Dave, you should come work for me." So he went to work for this guy and as a security consultant or whatever. He ended up doing another job that I can't remember. It was something else that he was doing. So when he retired after 5 or 7 years doing the security thing, and he was like, "Okay, I got that all straightened out. I'm good." And then he went to work for human resources for somewhere else. So he retired again. So after 3rd time's retired, he's like, "Finally, I can quit." And then he went to look for Bigfoot. And that was another one where it was basically like he was invited to join the team by, he said that there was a private group of people who were wealthy, who had put a bunch of money in. They basically had created a fund, and they were like, "We want to know if Bigfoot's real," right? And so they put together a team of top, because they had the funding, they were able to get top scientists and investigators. They wanted him as an investigator, he said he worked when he was in the police, he worked as a detective. So he was an actual, Columbo style
hater.
Huh? Hater? Yeah, that's right. That's right. He was a massively murdering asshole while he was in the cops. But yeah, so he worked missing persons cases, and he said he worked narcotics, and so they're tracking people down and whatever. And so they wanted an investigator type person along with a geneticist and other biologists and other things to do the whole Bigfoot thing. And then he also had a relationship with natives on reservations in the area because of his work as a policeman, where he had to kind of liaison with the reservation when something was going on with a native. Mm-hmm. So he already had relationships with them, which was what they wanted, because the places they were looking for the Bigfoot or whatever was often in native reservations, and so he actually worked closely with the Indians in that area. I can't remember which tribe it is, but they were the ones that gave him all the important data that they, because Native Americans are basically they don't question the existence of Sasquatch. They're like, yeah, they've been here for thousands of years. And they treat them as tribes too. They're not solitary. They treat them as a tribe of people. They're just hairy, but they're not animals, Huh. And so he was working with them or whatever, and that resulted, by the way, this is kind of a bit of a tangent, but it's still on his work. That resulted in the kind of now infamous Dr. Melba Ketchum's DNA report on hair samples that were Okay. And I remember when it happened, it was this humongous, like basically she puts this report out and she's like a top level geneticist and a genomic sequencer, a person who understands these incredibly complex machines that they use to do gene sequencing. Like very few people understand this at all. Okay. You could probably count on your hand the number of people in the United States that understand these top level gene sequencing machines or whatever. She's one of them. She built this one that she used. Okay. She's like freaking top of the line. Okay. So she puts this paper out after the investigators and everybody else did all their research, got the samples in and handed in all the field data or whatever. She took all the samples and started to run them through the sequencer. Okay. And then she basically she tried to publish the results. And because the results said that there was anomalous genetic information in some of the samples, I'm going way off on this tangent here and away from missing people, but it may connect. But the paper that the journal that was going to accept the paper got all this shit before it was published. Like people found out that this journal was going to publish this paper, and all these skirp-derps like flipped out. So the journal,
backed off.
Yeah, like backed down or whatever. So Dr. Ketchum was pissed off. Like she's like, what? Now she can't get her paper published anywhere. And this represented like a decade of work in total. So what they ended up doing was forming their own journal, and they did it all. They went through all the proper channels and everything, and like officially made a journal and then published it there. And people were like, "Oh my God, you published it in your own freaking journal!" And it's like, yeah, because no one else would publish it because you guys flipped out, But they were so pissed that anyway. At the time, and for years afterwards, I went look because I don't know anything about gene sequencing. I can't read her paper until I can't find holes in it or falsify it because I don't know anything about it, right? So I went looking for people who, I went looking for criticisms of it, and all I could find was fallacies. No one had attacked the data in the paper because they don't understand it either. So it all came down to like, oh, this can't be because it can't be, basically.
Yeah.
And
what you were saying before, like the skirp just doesn't accept it because
it can't be that.
Because
we know it can't be that. Yeah. But in this case, it was sort of a special case because the skirp-tards were not capable of understanding the paper because very few people are. And actually, there are no criticisms of the paper from people who are qualified to understand the data.
Yeah.
That was the key to me. So basically what I ended up saying on this is like, the experts do not question it. And she is an expert. And she isn't saying Bigfoot's real. She was saying there is anomalous genetic information in some of these samples. Anomalous in the sense that we don't have it in any other biology that we've got, right? Didn't match any animal. Not even close. Okay. Anyway. So he was involved in that, and then he gets into the missing people. So like that project was over, okay. Yeah. And these national park guys came up, these park rangers came up to him and said, "So we know about your work as an investigator, both in and out of the forest, and we think you should look at missing people in the parks because there's something weird happening here." Both of them were longtime employees of the NPS, the National Park System, the Department of the Interior. They had worked at multiple parks across the nation, and they had noticed a trend in missing people, like. Someone goes missing, and there's this enormous effort to find them. Enormous, like hundreds and hundreds of people. But then after, a few days, a week, it just disappears, and which makes sense because there's sort of a sliding scale of resources you could put into something like this. If you don't find them after 10 days, people may continue to search for 20 years after that, but it isn't going to be a massive coordinated effort with planes and helicopters and dogs and. Now, on some of these missing persons cases, I know for a fact because I've read websites of search and rescue guys who still go out to look for this person that they initially went to look for decades ago. They still go out there when they have free time and go look because they've never found them. But the big effort and the newspaper, the media information just chops off. It just stops. So that was the first thing that they were saying, like, this is weird. Like, and then the family is struggling, the family of the missing person is struggling to keep some kind of, information about it going. And then the Park Service doesn't keep records.
Yeah, they started destroying records.
Well, they claim that they just don't have them. Okay. That's not right. They claim that they don't have them collected into lists. So the records exist, but they're just in boxes in their freaking storage, you know. So that's why when he called the NPS and he said, I want all the missing persons in the Yosemite National Park area. And they're like, well, we don't keep lists of missing persons. And he's like, what? Because every other, you have to realize that the National Park Service is basically like a jurisdiction, that they're a legal jurisdiction. They have their own police force that's federal in scope. It's nationwide, but these guys all go to the same FBI training places that the FBI agents and, you know, they go to. So they're trained as like serious data collecting investigators, okay, and across the park system. So they are like a police, like if you
like
could,
a precinct almost.
yeah, like you could go to, you know, like any city will have the police, the police stations will have their own websites.
Yeah.
And in the website somewhere, you can find a list of missing people in their jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Right? Because missing people cases sort of they're not necessarily, nothing illegal may have happened.
Right.
You can't tell, like, did they get killed or did they just disappear because they want to?
Yeah.
So they sort of, the missing persons cases can have a tendency to fall between the cracks. Police know this and they know how important it is to the families of the missing. So they don't want to let them fall between the cracks. So they keep huge lists of missing people.
And not only that, but when there is a crime, right, they do find a murder, they can go back and look through missing persons cases
That's right.
to see if there's a pattern.
That's right. So the National Park Service told him they don't keep lists. Right? And he was like, why not? And they've given all these random excuses. Oh, we're trying to build up a system. We're going to, you know, we need to get funding. We're going to build a system and it's going to, you know, and he's like, all you need is a clipboard and a pen. You know, and when somebody goes missing in one of the parks, they write it on the clipboard, name, where they, the area where they went missing, what the date is and everything. And then at the end of each year, all the parks turn those in and you write on a bigger clipboard. Like, you know, you don't need millions of dollars to do this. Anyway, they claim that they don't keep a list. So using Freedom of Information Act, FOIA, he basically made a request like, he said, okay, well, because what you can do is you can request the government, like say if the government says, well, we don't, any bureaucracy says we don't keep that information together, you can tell them to get it together and give it to you with a FOIA request. Okay. And he said, you know, he's like, so, okay, I'm giving a FOIA request for all the missing persons in the Yosemite Park. And, you know, and like in the FOIA legislation, there's an exemption for anyone who's a published author, which he was many times over at that point. A published author can't be charged by the institution for the hours that their employees have to go digging through their archives to put together the information, right? Which is in keeping with this freedom of information thing. Like they could just use the prices to keep people from getting the information, right? So the law specifically prohibits them from using some monetary thing to keep people from getting information. But what they told him was, oh, your books aren't in enough public libraries to qualify for the exemption.
Oh my God.
And he's, you know, and of course there's no such
statute. Or whatever,
statute in the law. You know, he's like, well, it's just arbitrary. Like how many libraries does it have to be in? You know, all of them? Anyway, it doesn't matter. They're just using it to hide behind. So he was like, okay, fine. How much would it be for all the missing people in Yosemite? And they told him it's like $34,000 was how much they would charge him just to gather together
all the
yeah. And he was like, okay, well, how much for the entire system, every park in the system? It was like 1.4 million. Is how much money they wanted to put all that information together. And that's kind of confusing because people are like, well, where did they come up with that number? And they basically what they do is they say, well, we have this high-level administrator who would have to go through all the records, and he gets paid $95 an hour, and we estimate that it'll take him this many hours to go through and read every single one and redact all the names, and you know, and that's why it'll cost you $1.4 million because you're going to be paying that guy or multiples of those people to do it. It's bullshit. It's just a way to withhold the information. So the way he's had to gather the missing persons cases is the hard way. Around every national park are a bunch of small towns at the perimeter. So you have to go to those small towns, go to their libraries, and go through their freaking newspaper records looking for missing persons.
Oh, my God.
And then when he finds an individual one, so like, you know, in 1942, there's a missing persons in this small town newspaper in this small town. He gets the name down. He copies off every article he can find on it. And then he sends a specific request to the park system for that one case.
Holy shit.
Okay, so this is why it's taken them years and years and years and thousands of man hours to do this. Because every FOIA request is also a gigantic, massive deal because the government takes forever to do anything. So you FOIA the park for this one case, and then it could take weeks or months for them to even get back to you to say no. And then you send it again because, like the way they work is like they'll refuse it based on some little thing that you, like some way you said it that isn't right,
Yep.
Bureaucratic bullshit. Anyway, so using this incredibly, unwieldy, like tiring long-term system, they eventually got tens of thousands of cases, okay? Lots of missing people all over the United States and some in Canada initially. And he said that out of these many thousands of cases, they got 411 that were anomalous, okay? So in other words, he's not saying that every person that goes missing in a national park is weird.
Right.
They culled through thousands and thousands and thousands of cases and discarded any one of them that was obviously an animal attack, that was obviously the person got lost, broke their ankle, and starved to death, whatever, right? They got rid of all those. Anyone where the person was depressed or had any kind of suicidal tendencies, they got rid of it. Even if it wasn't really clear, even if that was just a suggestion, like, oh, they had some depression or whatever, they just discarded that one, okay? So, because the first criticism you see of the 411 stuff is people like, well, they probably committed suicide, or well, it was probably an animal attack, or what? And it's like, no, they got rid of those. An animal attack is obvious. There's huge amounts of blood. There's a gigantic, like people don't just get killed by animals like that. Even if a bear attacks you, there's going to be a spot where there was a struggle, and there's going to be blood and shit and pieces of clothes and just.
Yeah.
And then the bear's going to eat the person and walk off taking shits and leave, and then the scat, you could find evidence, right?
Yeah.
Pieces of clothing, jewelry. So when it's an animal attack, it's pretty obvious, especially to the professionals who are looking, like the park professionals. And if it's anytime there's a bear area or other like wolves or other large predators, when people go missing, the parks always bring in experts on those animals to determine whether or not it was, and so like it's easy to sort of cull those cases out, which is why it's ridiculous when people say, oh, it's Wolverines doing it. So he got rid of those. He gets rid of ones that were possible suicides. And so you're left with a bunch of cases, though, that are just, you can't necessarily say they're unsolved, because in a lot of cases, the bodies were eventually found.
Yeah, but it was the circumstances in which they went missing that were anomalous.
Right. Or when they find the bodies, you're like, how the fuck did they get here?
Yeah.
Or when they find the bodies, you're like, where's the rest of them? Or when they find the bodies, the circumstances of the scene is inexplicable. Like they find the belt off the pants, but rolled up into a tight little roll and set next to the boots, which are not on the feet, but the feet are in the socks. But the feet, like the bones disappear above the ankles. It just like there's all kinds of weird shit where the clothing is like folded up neatly and set aside, but the person disappeared in midwinter. So you know that they didn't walk off into the like the 20-foot snowdrifts and just like disrobe completely and die there. That's like that's just. But there are cases like that where the place where they find the person is impossible for them to get to at the time they went missing, which implies that either they didn't die when they went missing, and in other words, so you go missing in midwinter at Crater Lake National Park, which is up in Washington State. So the snowdrifts are enormous, right? The park will keep one path straight down to the crater, to the lake, cleared. And so on either side of the path, you've got basically 20-foot cliffs of snow. Okay? You can't really leave the path. Try climbing 20-foot cliffs of ice. Yeah. You can't do it. It's basically you're in a half pipe. And if you start trying to walk up that cliff, you slide back down. And unless you have climbing gear, but somebody walks down there with a camera and just doesn't come back. Okay? They don't find his body. At first, they assumed that he fell off the side, slid down the crater into the water, okay, or broke his bones on the ice, or whatever, and died down there. But anyway, they eventually find his body miles and miles and miles away in a box canyon, and it's discovered in the summer, like years and years later by some people who are basically bushwhacking. They're way off trail, hiking off trail way out there. And when the Rangers went to find it, they said they had to take horses, and this is in the summertime. So there's, they were like, we had to take horses to get there. It was really far, and it was really hard to get there in the summer when there's no snow.
Shit.
So how did the guy get there?
Yeah,
in the winter.
middle of winter. Yeah.
Right. So first he would have to scale this snowdrift cliff off the trail, get up there on top of the snow, and then manage to
Without snowshoes.
Right.
Like, go all the way.
and manage to walk miles and miles through untracked snow-covered forest. It's just not possible. And
Yeah.
yet this is where his remains are found, but it's not him because they found his clothing and his pants. The ranger said that it looked like he had stepped over this fallen log and then like kind of undid he unsnapped and unzipped his pants and then died where he was standing because the pants were crumpled, like had sort of accordion down,
Yeah.
like he was standing when he died. Okay. And he didn't have boots on, but there were socks still in the pants. And in the socks were tiny little bits of feet bones and stuff and one piece of a femur, but that's it. There was nothing else. So,
crazy.
but the way the pants crumpled and the way the socks were still in them, it looked like he was standing up and died standing, and then he slowly decomposed standing up. That's the way because normally when you die, you fall down. So your pants are laid out like your legs were falling down, but these were crumpled straight down like he had died standing up. He
Fell into a crevasse.
He fell into a crevasse. So the scene was so weird that the park rangers were like, whoa. They were both like, they backed out of there because they were like, it was so strange that they didn't even want to touch it. And they called an FBI evidence response team that spent 4 days on that site. Right? Going over the whole place with a fine-tooth comb. And they found like little tiny fragments of bone that they couldn't even verify were human. But that they assumed, put them all in evidence bags, assuming that it was him. They found a fragment of the top of his skull, like a piece of parietal plate.
What's the parietal plate?
There's two of them. So, so I still contend. I'm like, well, they never, this guy's name, by the way, was Charles McCullough. I'm like, they never found Charles McCullough. They found pieces of feet bone, a tiny fragment of femur, and a piece of his skull. That is not Charles McCullough.
And his clothes.
Where are the rest of him? Yeah. His backpack was there that had his car keys in it. His camera stuff has never been found. Never. And he had a huge camera case because he was walking down there specifically to take pictures of the lake in the winter.
Yeah, so why would he even go?
Right, where he was nowhere near the lake. It was still in the park system, but it was not. You can't see the lake from there. He was down in a canyon. Through miles and miles of heavily, like old growth forest, rough terrain. Like the rangers said, they were on horses. It took them forever to get there, and it was really hard on horseback. So it's cases like that where you're just like, okay, so they eventually found the guy, but finding him made it more mysterious.
Right.
And they didn't really find him. They found fragments. Some of these cases, they will locate a tooth and call it good. Like, okay, we found him. From a single tooth. Like, there was
I could have lost that tooth in a fight.
Right. Yeah. Punch me in the face. Spit the tooth out. Kept fighting. But, there was a case of I'm thinking about the teeth. There was a kid, 17 years old. He went on a hunting trip with a whole bunch of people. And I don't remember which park it was, but they were elk hunting. And so he had a rifle, okay, so he's armed. And he was very experienced at this. He was very outdoorsy, very healthy, very fit, and it started to snow during the hunting party or whatever. And so everyone was kind of, because the weather started getting worse and worse, everybody kind of started to come back towards the vehicles. And he didn't. Okay. So there was this massive search for him, and there was something where some of the searchers thought they might have found his trail because he was because there was snow, so you could see tracks. Well, for some reason, it looked like his trail went up way like when everybody else was coming down mountain towards where the cars were parked, He, for some reason, kept going up, even though the snow was getting. And then, of course, since you're climbing a mountain, the higher up you get, the worse the weather is.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't. If any of you haven't been on mountains during that kind of inclement weather, it gets worse fast. Like, you can sometimes just look up and see that, like, 1,000 feet above you, it's terrible weather, and where you are, it's kind of cold and drizzly, but it's not that bad. But if you walked up 1,000 feet, you'd be in the middle of a blizzard and a whiteout, right? So he kept.
Yeah, if you've ever taken a ski lift from the lodge to the top, you're like, oh shit!
Yeah, you get up there, you're like, holy crap! Can't even see the freaking car in front of you on the lift, and it's just like crazy snow. But you ski down to the bottom, and it's like, it's not a whiteout or whatever.
Yeah.
So he seemed to keep going up. They were following his trail. He seemed to keep going up until he got on a ridge line, and then walks down the ridge line, like going, And they found his gun. It was bent. Okay, and when they got up to the ridge line, they said it looked like he was running.
Oh, the tracks looked like he was running.
Yeah, so each footprint was far apart from the one behind it, and there was places where they could see he was putting his hand, like he was just hauling his
booking it. Huh?
Yeah, his gun was bent. Like, try to bend a rifle, seriously.
Yeah.
Okay, so he'd thrown it aside, and he's just booking it or whatever, and then like the trail just faded out, and they were saying it's because it was snowing so much that it just got fainter and fainter and fainter until it just disappeared or whatever. And then after the winter was gone or whatever, they were back up there and they found one tooth on top of that ridge, and they were like, well, we found him. I'm like, no, you didn't. One fucking tooth. The way he was running, he could have stumbled and hit his hit his face on a rock or whatever and lost that tooth. But cases like that just don't make any sense. Like, why did he go up when the weather was getting worse? Why did he go up into worse weather and then run down the ridgeline?
Yeah.
Away from all the cars. What bent his gun? There are other cases where the person who goes missing cannot actually walk. Or if they can walk, so there's one of an old man who has horribly bad knees. Okay? So he basically, and they go out, they're rock hunting. They go out into this area where they're kind of on a mountainside, and he has this one area where he likes to rock hunt, and he can't really get around too well. So it's like his relatives, it's his family. They help him get out there, right? And they get him into his area, and he can kind of like hobble around with his cane in this one area and sort of hunt for fossils or arrowheads or whatever. But he's not going to go anywhere because he can, after 200 steps, he has to sit down. Like, he can't. His knees don't. And so he disappears without a trace. Fucking vanishes without a trace. They get hundreds of people out there, dogs trying to track him or whatever, and they've never found him. How does he disappear? He can't even fucking walk more than 200 feet.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of those cases where the person is obviously handicapped and they can't really get lost because they can't go anywhere, and yet they disappear without a fucking trace. There are some cases where the person who goes missing is in contact with people at the time of something happening, right? So like I can't remember the dude's name.
What was the one that you told me where the guy, like, I think there was something like they were on this kayaking trip, and he had there was like this chick that was with him or whatever, his wife. Yeah. He called his wife, like he gets down there and he's like, they're chasing me or whatever.
Yeah, that's what I was about to.
Okay,
That's crazy. That's the one I was about to say. So he's a famous football player.
That's right, yeah.
Like, the dude's famous, and he's like, and he's a quarterback. Like, and he's in the NFL. He's like ridiculously freaking in terms of like physicality. This dude is not gonna.
Yeah, he's tip top.
Yeah, and he'll kick any 5 dudes' asses. Like, like some of the stories from his coaches and stuff. They were like, he would tell the linemen, like, why are you wasting time like blocking these dudes? Like, let him hit me. I'm fine. Like
Yeah.
They were just like, this dude is just he was invincible. Okay, and yet. So they go on this fishing trip, and it's not in a place where it gets incredibly cold, but there's a river, and they go and fishing on the river or whatever. And he tells his family, he's like, I want to kind of go make one more run, right? So he goes out on the river, and they have agreed to come pick him up at 8:30 at this place where he can kind of put in, and as it's
or where he gets out or whatever.
Yeah, where he basically comes down the river and he can dock there. Yeah. So they've got an agreed meeting place, but he calls his wife, maybe 20 minutes before the meeting time or whatever. He calls her and says, I'm being chased and shit's getting kind of hairy, and then the call gets interrupted or whatever. And she's like, what the fuck? You know, and she said he sounded scared. I'm like, this dude's not scared of anyone. Okay. Yeah. She calls him back and manages to actually reach him again. And she says, hun, like, what, give me your coordinates. Like, look on your phone and get your GPS coordinates. And he manages to do that before the call gets disconnected again. So they get actual direct latitude and longitude coordinates of what his phone said where he was at the time. Then they can't reach him anymore. Or no, wait, he was able to make another phone call, but for some reason he called somebody that wasn't even on the trip with him. He calls a friend who's out of state, somebody who was like not there with them. Calls him and tells him like, yeah, you know, I'm about to. He tells the guy, I'm getting out of the boat. I'm taking off my clothes. Shit's getting serious, and it's getting weirder, you know. Like he's like, what are you taking your clothes off for? Okay, and it was also getting dark, so they went to the meeting place where he was supposed to meet them. And he doesn't show up. They eventually call police. They tell him the phone calls, whatever they got. And one of the deputies, who was the sheriff deputies, who was first put on the case, he immediately calls the phone company, the guy's cellular company, and says, give me some pings on the phone. The pings that the cellular company gives on the phone like cross enormous distances in impossible amounts of time. You know, and people have tried people had tried to explain it using like, well, you know, so he was connected to this tower, and then he connects to that
bullshit.
tower. Yeah, no, there's like the tower over here is saying he's connected to that one when there's a tower closer to the place where he was. The only way he could connect to that farther tower is if he went way over here and got away from this closer tower, and that would mean he would have crossed roads and just, you know, not possible. So he basically disappears. They search for him for days. They eventually find him in a couple of weeks. And this is the thing, they find him face down. He was still wearing his waders, like, you know, the big heavy rubber river waders, but the suspenders that hold the waders up were all twisted and crossed on his back.
Like it
was used as a handle.
Oh, okay.
Something just set him down, because like if people are running or they're exhausted and they're going to die, they don't die face down. Something has to kill you while you're standing up for you to fall face down and not roll over. You see what I'm saying? People don't like die face down. If you fall and you're like on your face, you're like ugh, and you roll over because you don't want to lay on your face. You know what I'm saying? Like you basically have to be unconscious or dead and stay that way after you land face down for you to, or you have to be put there.
Yeah.
And like, so Paulides says this as a police officer. Like he was like, when people get shot multiple times and we find their dead bodies, they're face up because they didn't die when they first fell.
Right.
If you see somebody and they're laying face down in a puddle of their own blood, they died
while falling or
went unconscious or whatever, like got shot in the head. You know what I'm saying? But anyone who didn't die immediately rolls over onto their back because nobody wants to be breathing dirt or whatever. Huh. So when you find somebody on their face, it usually means that they were dead before they hit the ground in that spot. And so the twisted suspenders implies that somebody set him down using the suspenders as a handle. I'm just guessing. He doesn't say that in the books. But he just tells you about the suspenders being all twisted up. And he's like, and that's really uncomfortable. If you ever worn waders, to have them all twisted on your back, you know? Like, I can't imagine that he was just using them like
boat?
that.
Like what was going on with it?
They found his kayak, and one of the oars was gone. And there was something else weird about it. I can't remember. But anyway, the mystery has never been solved. Like, people tried to say he was on drugs, or he was taking some prescription medication that made him go insane, which is ridiculous. They're just pie in the sky and shit, you know, throwing stuff against the wall and hoping something sticks that people will accept because it's a mystery.
Yeah.
There's no explanation for it. And like, why did he call and say I'm being chased? Oh, because he was like on drugs. And you know, when you take like pain pills, you hallucinate people chasing you down rivers. It's stupid. Yeah, so there was that case. There's been a couple other ones like that where people are on the contact people. There's one with a Japanese girl, a brilliant physicist. This is the other thing. One of the points, the profile points, is like people who disappear are either very small children. Okay, people who disappear in these cases tend to be either very young children, very old people, extremely smart people, or people who are a little slow. There's not really normal people in there a lot. They also tend to be Caucasian or Asian. And in the Caucasian group, they tend to be German. Okay, there's a preponderance of Germans in the Caucasian group. There's very few black people, very few Hispanics. Okay, so all of these things make it kind of strange.
So if you're going to go to a national park,
Don't be a white guy.
make sure you bring along
dumb.
a token black guy or Mexican with you if you're white.
Right, and that just means that you'll disappear when you're in. Yeah, so
And then don't let them let you out of their sight.
right.
But there have been some you've told me about too, where, like there was this terrible story, but it was like a father and his son or whatever.
Yeah,
and the son just like walked around a bush
Yeah.
and just gone.
Yeah, there's multiple ones of those. Like they were playing hide and seek. They went way up into this high field. And this is the Dennis Martin case. No, it's not Dennis Martin.
There was one where they were like picking blueberries or something.
Yeah, so there was a father-son thing where they were picking berries up there. And, so you're up there with your son. He's like 3 or 4 or whatever. And the father's up there with his son. And they're picking berries and having a good time. But the berry it's huckleberries. They're thick bushes. He lets his son barely out of his sight. They're in bushes. So like the kid is occulted by a bush briefly. And he just never comes back around it. And there's no scream. There's no sound. And the child was feet away from the father. Right? Just.
It was quicksand.
Right. Very fast quicksand. Because the son didn't go, Dad, I'm sinking. Right? He's just like. But, and people will say stuff like that. He fell into a cave.
Didn't have Lassie there.
Right.
Lassie would have saved him.
It was an old well. Yeah. So he just disappears. There are other ones where people are walking in a single file down a trail, right? So you're walking down a trail, and imagine, I've always told people this, like, to me, this really brought the gravity of it home. Imagine that you're walking behind somebody, and they're 10 or 15 feet in front of you, and the trail is going through the woods, and there's just a big, like, glacial erratic. There's a huge boulder that the trail kind of goes up to and then sort of snakes around, takes a left and goes around a rock, right? So the person in front of you takes the left and disappears behind the rock. A couple of seconds later, you get up there and you turn, and the person's gone, and they're never fucking found. And there was no sound, and they were like seconds in front of you.
Yeah, that's just crazy, dude.
It's almost impossible, like that. You can't be like, they got lost.
Yeah, they fell in a crevasse.
In 2 seconds, they got lost.
They fell in a crevasse that appeared momentarily.
Yeah,
And it was a sound warp.
yeah, and and you'll actually hear stuff like that, like the law enforcement people or the search and rescue people there's statements in these cases where they're like, it's like the earth swallowed them, or it's like they climbed up a tree and just kept going. One time the guy said that there was a person who disappeared on the mountain. It's another case where you're climbing a mountain on a sort of a plowed trail. So you've got these impossible cliffs of snow on either side of you. And the mountain they're climbing is Shasta, I think. It's either Mount Shasta or Mount Rainier. Maybe it's Mount Rainier. But it's 3 older dudes. They're in their 60s. They're all they're kind of like hammerheads, so they like to hike and all this bullshit. So they're all in good shape. They want to summit this mountain, right? So they had the 3 friends. They had agreed on this trip for a long time. They wanted to get to the summit of this mountain, and it's kind of a 2 or 3 day ordeal. Like you get to the base camp, your K1, whatever, and you get to the next one. So they camped out in this one spot on the first day. The next morning when they wake up, one of the guys is like, he's feeling weird. He's just like, I don't feel so great, guys. And they're like, okay, well, there's a ranger station just up the trail, a couple of, maybe 1,000 yards or whatever, just a kilometer away. Just go up the trail. There's a big lake. There's a ranger station there, and they can give you some altitude pill. If they thought he was having altitude sickness because he's kind of nauseated or whatever. So, and they're like, we'll pack up camp and we'll meet you up there. We'll be right behind you. So he sets off. They finish packing up camp. They hike up to the ranger station, and he never arrived.
Yeah, but it's on a plowed trail.
Yeah,
So
you can't really leave the trail. And he was feeling sick. Why would he fucking leave the trail? So there's this enormous search, and the way they did this one, they couldn't find him anywhere around, and they eventually were just like, where the fuck did he go? So what they ended up doing was, like, using helicopters to get the searchers up to the peak of the mountain, dropping them off there, and they just went down every freaking side, just poured down the mountain, and they never found even a trace. None of his equipment. He was wearing a giant backpack with all this equipment. Never found anything. Still haven't, to this day, have found a single trace of that guy. And the searcher who was in charge, the guy who was in charge of the whole search, he was like, he isn't on this mountain. He either went in or he went up, but he ain't on it.
Shit.
So there's stuff like that. So so we discuss this all the time. Like, what is happening? Like, what what Paulides says is like, because people are always asking, well, what do you do? Do you think it's Bigfoot?
Yeah.
And what he says is, he's like, I don't know what it is. I have no idea what it is. What my data tells me is what it isn't, and it's not people. It's not getting lost. It's not they're not getting abducted by a human.
Yeah.
No human can abduct somebody completely silently. There's going to be a struggle. Even if it's a little kid, you grab them and you start running. Guess what? Your running is going to make noise.
Yeah.
The other big point that I'll always point this out when people are they're saying, well, I think I know what it is. I'm like, well, how come the dogs can't track? Because this is another big deal. They bring in like these canine teams to track the person's scent, like hunting, what are they called? Not greyhounds. What do they call when the hunting dogs?
I don't know.
God damn it.
Anyway,
Thanks for the help. Anyway, yeah. So
German shepherds, maybe like canine dogs.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't matter. But they're police dogs. Sometimes they're local. They'll bring in the police dogs.
They're trained to follow the scent of,
right.
of people.
So
they're tracking dogs.
Yeah. So they can take here's an article of clothing from the person who's gone missing because the family's got their stuff. You let the dog smell it, and then they kind of walk around with them in an expanding circle in the last known area where the person was. The dog picks up the scent and just freaking takes off, right?
Yeah.
And they follow him. Well, there's a lot of weird shit with the tracking dogs. Like the person went missing this day, so there is no way that the scent has been erased by anything, not even rain. Like wind doesn't erase it, rain doesn't erase it, not that quickly. So when you have a known last known location of the person, like this was their camp, they were here, and they were here earlier this day or even yesterday. Yeah. The scent's not gone.
Right, the dog can pick it up.
Right. I mean, it's just so. Sometimes the dogs just don't do it. They just don't. They won't. They either lay down and refuse, which is crazy. Because like, if any of you have ever seen a dog who's like, they're like obsessed with doing something. Like they want you to throw the ball. You throw the ball and they can bring it back. You throw the ball and they bring it back. They throw the ball and they're obsessed with it. Right. That's what these dogs are like with the tracking. They're freaking upset and they love it when they're doing it. They fucking love it. Okay, this is what they live for, which is why they like when they catch the scent, they're pulling on the leash and you have to run it. I mean, they're just like rah, they're going after it. So when they just lay down and refuse to do it, that's fucking weird.
Yeah, like they're smelling something else. And they're like, no, I don't want to follow that.
Sometimes they'll get the scent and they freaking take off and everybody's running after the dog. Like and the dog gets to a certain spot and just stops and it just refuses to go any further. And the guy in the report it says dog refused to search.
That's crazy.
That's just nuts. Sometimes the dogs they take off in a direction where everybody's like, what the fuck? Like straight up the mountain. When the person was on the trail and it's just like the dog is like, bam, up the mountain. It's a 2-year-old and they're straight up this, this like heavy rubble or whatever. They're trying to track it up there and it goes up the mountain and it goes down the next side and it goes across a river and then it goes up the next mountain and down the next, and they're chasing a 2-year-old. There was one where they eventually found his body, 2-year-old child. In 19 hours, they found him 12 miles away over 2 freaking mountains across multiple rivers and barbed wire fences and all this bullshit. There's just no fucking way.
Was he still alive?
No. Covered in scratches from head to toe, too. Lateral ones.
Like he'd been hauled at, like somebody grabbed him and just hauled ass over 2 mountains.
There were lateral scratches like that were going up and down his body, not,
Oh, like he was being dragged.
Yeah.
Almost. Shit.
And when the people are found, they're missing their shoes. Sometimes they find the body, like where the person went missing, they go off and they start tracking them or whatever, and like 60 yards away from the place where they disappeared, they find a single, like a glove. And they keep going and they find another glove, they find a scarf, then they find the hat. Like they're just shedding articles of clothing immediately after they disappear. People are like, well, it's paradoxical undressing, which is
something they invented to fix that problem.
Yeah, well, so this is what I found, because I did a bunch of research on this. Like, there are supposedly accounts of paradoxical undressing, but they're also but every single known case of what they call paradoxical undressing is the coat, only the coat, because the way they explain it is when you get into advanced hypothermia, where you're basically about to die, what causes like you to get frostbite is your body is like not putting blood out into the extremities because it's trying to keep your core temperature up, right?
Yeah.
At some point, your body gives up. And so all this hot blood starts flowing out to the extremities again, and you'll actually feel hot, but you're actually dying. Okay? So people will take their coats off because they think they're hot. They don't take off their boots and their pants and their shirt and their fucking scarves. They take off their coat because they think, wow, I'm kind of warm. Also, every single known case of paradoxical undressing is directly related to what's called terminal burrowing. Almost immediately after somebody sheds the coat because of paradoxical undressing, they go into terminal burrowing, which is basically like where they find the person, they're dead, they've taken their coat off, and they're kind of in a hole in the snow that they made because they sort of collapse onto the snow and they start trying to make a place where they covered up. They try to get shelter. It's called terminal burrowing.
That's freaky, man.
Yeah, I know.
Shit.
So they find them in this kind of this sort of divot in the snow that they've made by sort of trying to roll their body down to get it underneath something. So anytime somebody actually dies from hypothermia, they may have taken off their coat and they may be in a depression they made in the snow, but they don't shed every fucking article of clothing right after they went missing.
Yeah.
So.
And their coat would be right nearby.
Right. Whereas in most of these cases, they find all the articles of clothing, but never the person, or they find the person, but never any of their clothes. And there's no terminal burrowing at all, which means that they didn't die from hypothermia. If you die from hypothermia and you actually do the paradoxical undressing, you're going to immediately go into terminal burrowing. Like every known case like that, they're closely associated, because if you hit the paradoxical undressing mode, you're about to die because your body has given up trying to keep you warm, right?
Man, that's insane, dude. That's freaky shit.
Yeah. So, but people will try to blame the clothing loss on paradoxical undressing. Like, no one takes their boots off because they think they're warm.
Yeah.
You're out in the middle of the wilderness. You're like, wow, my arms are feeling warm. I'm going to take off my boots and then my socks and then my pants and then my shirt and my coat and my gloves and my hat and my scarf. And then I'm going to disappear forever. I'm going to go running off in the woods in my fucking underwear and never be found. That's not what happens. So that's another, it's just a skirp derp.
Yeah.
The paradoxical undressing. Because they don't want to admit that there's something weird happening. So.
Yeah, that's crazy shit.
Yeah. So I can, the show's going over here, so we got the end, but I can continue this on the next show. I can keep talking about the 401 stuff. I've basically laid down the foundation for why these cases are weird and why they can't be skirp derped. So now, like, knowing more information about them, I can tell you a couple of other specific stories that have struck me as being exceptionally strange.
Yeah.
And now that you kind of have the background on the whole deal, you'll understand why these are exceptionally strange. Because what Kyle and I are mostly interested in this is, of course, what is happening.
Right.
Because something extraordinary is happening to these people. This is the main thing that kind of creeps me out about this whole thing, not aside from the fact that you can disappear in 6 seconds. That bothers me a lot when I park somewhere in the dark and I'm by myself. I get out of the car, I'm like, 6 fucking seconds. But the main thing that I keep thinking about is, like, each one of these people has experienced something that is beyond our frame of reference. It is unknown completely. So, like, whatever happens to them is while it's happening to them, they will have no context for it because we don't have any explanation for these disappearances. So whatever's happening to them is, like, extraordinary.
Yeah.
And you have to say, what is it? Like, I don't think it's one thing either.
Yeah, that's what I always try to do is, like, what could this be?
Yeah.
But that is fascinating. Like, you really set the table on that one, buddy. That's a fucking badass setup of the table.
Sweet. I've had some practice talking to people about it, and they're just like, well, it could be that. And I'm like, no. No.
Well, like a derp derp. No.
Yeah, no. And really, no matter what, all the other weird points aside, because there's weird things about berry patches, like the kid that disappeared a lot of people disappeared during berry hunting. A lot of people disappear. And like I said, there's the intelligence deal. There's there's also clusters. So he's gathered together clusters of geographical, so in this area, around this mountain or near this lake, there's a cluster of missing people, and they correlate to each other. So in Pennsylvania, in between 1950 and 1960, a shitload of children between the ages of 8 and 2 disappeared, and they were all males. Okay, that's just you can't. Weird. Yeah, something extraordinary is happening, and it's targeting people. And in other cases, I don't remember exactly, but he's showing you how so in this area, this entire cluster is sort of middle-aged, overweight females with blonde hair. What the fuck?
Yeah, that's weird.
What the fuck? Or there was one where it was kind of youngish, not children, but youngish males with blonde hair that were sort of stocky. But some of them were female, but they looked, because they had short cropped hair, they looked like from maybe if you didn't know humans very well, you might think that kind of looked like the guy you want.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
If you don't know humans very well.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
No human would look at this female and think that's a guy. But if you're just looking at all of them and you see this is a short, stocky dude with close cropped blonde hair. That's a short, stocky dude with close cropped blonde hair. That's a short, stocky woman with close cropped blonde hair.
Yeah.
But you turn her around where you're looking at her back, and if you may not know, especially if she's wearing cold gear.
Yeah.
How would you tell?
Man, that's crazy.
Especially if you were something that it just kind of looks like whatever's doing it has things they're looking for, but they can't discern certain things. So you see this pattern, but then things that don't match the pattern, but they do sort of. That's fucking weird. That's really strange.
Shit.
So next time, people.
Yeah.
Episode 22.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys can get a hold of us at brothersoftheserpent.blogspot.com. You can go there and comment. Tell us we suck, or tell us we're badass. Any questions?
And then go elsewhere and tell everyone we're badass.
That's right. You can come on the blog and say, you guys fucking suck. But go to the iTunes store and be like, these guys are awesome. You can email us at brothersoftheserpent@gmail.com. And we want to thank Laura for the intros, Kyle and Ty, and for the music, for all the bumper music and everything.
I wrote all that music.
Yeah. And thanks to Kyle also for all the audio production. It's been badass.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, it was badass when we started, but now it's really fucking badass.
Thanks to Russ for all the content. Because, I'd be fucked.
Yeah, thanks to Kyle.
I'd be rolling in here every day and be like, I've been looking at stars and pyramids.
Snakes. That's right. Thanks to Aetherium Studios, AWACS Productions, RK Enterprises, and all of you listeners out there. Thank you guys. Good night. Adamu, get back to work. Give me that gold.
Thanks.